If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 161. This Trainee Fatui Harbinger is too unreliable. 161. Cough, cough, cough. Luo Qing spat out a mouthful of blood. He glanced down at Lumen, who had been transported out of the plain of Euthymia, and offered a faint smile to the Raiden Shogun. "You got me," he said softly. Lumen's reappearance signaled that I had been defeated. The obsession with eternity must have been resolved. Any last words? The Raiden Shogun held Luo Qing firmly with her left hand while raising the Muzu Ishin with her right. Her eyes were cold and unfeeling. Cough, cough. Another mouthful of blood spilled from Luo Qing's lips. The smile on his face turned pale, his energy waning. Ei's obsession with eternity might have been shattered, but the murderous intent she had sown within the shogun remained unyielding. Even as the battles between the resistance and the shogunate began to subside, Luo Qing understood one thing clearly: unless he died here, neither Ei nor the shogun would let him live. "It seems the both of you really want me dead," Luo Qing muttered weakly. He had no intention of resisting any more. This body and her obsession, it ends here. The Muzu Ishin traced a sharp arc through the air and pierced through Luo Qing's body. "Ah, it hurts," he whispered, feeling the sharp pain rip through his abdomen. Yet he forced himself to stay calm, a faint smile lingering on his lips. He reached out with a trembling hand, gently brushing his fingers across the Raiden Shogun's face. "You know, you look rather beautiful, like this," he murmured. And then, with a twist of his neck, Luo Qing slid along the blade's edge, falling toward the ground below. This scene unfolded before everyone's eyes. Goro, Lumen, Kaedhara Kazuha and the resistance fighters, they all stared in disbelief. Luo Qing, who had protected them and held back the Raiden Shogun, would no longer witness the peace they were about to achieve. "Luo Qing!" Lumen cried out, dashing toward him in an attempt to catch his falling body. Even Paimon flew after her, desperate to help. On a rooftop near Komor Tea House, Kamisato Ayaka collapsed, her hands clasped tightly together. "Luo Qing, how could this? No! I must save him!" Before Toma could stop her, Ayaka summoned the power of her vision and charged toward Luo Qing without hesitation. At the edge of Inajima City, 4 figures stood frozen. Never had they imagined their lord would die before their eyes. "Lord Luo Qing! Lord Luo Qing!" Teresa's vacant expression twisted into a scream as she bolted in Luo Qing's direction. But before she could take more than a few steps, the others held her back. "Are you insane? That's the Raiden Shogun. You'll only throw your life away!" Igor shouted. "Let me go! Lord Luo Qing is dying. I must save him!" Teresa yelled in anguish. "Don't forget our mission!" Natalia barked, gripping Teresa's shoulders tightly. "Our orders are to ensure Lady Rosalina's safety and retreat. Are you going to defy his final command?" But... Meanwhile, high above the battlefield, Raiden Shogun stared at her hand, still clutching the Muzu Ishin, as Luo Qing's final words echoed in her mind. Hadn't she achieved her goal? Hadn't she erased him as part of her eternal obsession? So why did her heart feel so empty? Suddenly, she dove toward Luo Qing's falling body, catching him in her arms. Lumen and Ayaka, rushing toward him, froze in their tracks, too stunned to approach. "What did you mean by that?" the shogun demanded, her voice trembling. But in her arms, Luo Qing's life force had all but faded. His lips curled into a faint, gentle smile as he attempted to raise his hand once more to touch her face. Yet, halfway there, his strength failed him, and his hand fell limp. The next moment, Luo Qing's body dissolved into specks of deep blue starlight, vanishing from the shogun's embrace. "No, wait! Wait!" The Raiden Shogun tried desperately to grasp the scattering starlight, but each attempt only made it dissipate faster. At last, all the light was gone. The Tenchikaku was empty. Luo Qing's presence was no more. How could this happen? The shogun's eternal form dissipated, leaving her clad in her familiar deep purple kimono. She fell to her knees before the gathered soldiers. A single tear slipped down her cheek, a tear from a god. Witnessing their archon in such a vulnerable state, mourning as if she had lost a loved one, left everyone present in stunned silence. They had never seen her cry before. This. Lumen and Paimon exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of what to do. Outside the Tenchikaku, Kamisato Ayaka crumpled at the base of the statue of the omnipresent god. "Luo Qing! Luo Qing! Her cries were heart-wrenching as tears streamed freely down her face. She curled into herself, clutching her hands tightly to her chest as though trying to hold onto him. Ah! Toma sighed softly, stepping beside her. He placed a comforting hand on her shoulder as he gazed toward the doors of the Tenchikaku where resistance and shogunate forces stood mingled. With a shake of his head, he muttered, just like before. All we're left with is regret and sighs. There's nothing more we can do. Nothing left to save. Beyond the city, 4 figures carried a weakened Rosalind toward their hidden camp. They glanced back occasionally at the distant Tenchikaku, their eyes filled with determination and grief. Even though their lord had vanished into starlight, they clung to the belief that one day, he would return. Lord Luo Qing! Teresa whispered. As they pressed on, tears fell silently from her eyes, leaving tiny drops glistening on the grass. At the same time, pain radiated from his abdomen as Luo Qing gasped for breath. He quickly pulled out a supreme vitality pill from his system inventory, ignoring its size as he shoved it into his mouth. While chewing, he cautiously scanned his surroundings. Only at the last moment had he used his substitute doll to escape. It seemed the doll's description was accurate. He had been transported to a completely different location. Looking around, Luo Qing found himself atop a cliff, overlooking a vast, shattered plain. What is this place? His gaze fell on a massive, verdant tree at the center of the plain, and he froze in place. Suddenly, a voice rang out behind him. Fatu, get ready. We've got Fatui incoming. Hey! Chapter 162, This Trainee Fatui Harbinger is too unreliable. 162. Luo Qing turned his head. A group of knights in uniform surrounded him, gripping long swords as they closed in. Standing directly in front of him was a young woman with short, sky blue hair. She wore tight black leather pants and a cropped white jacket with deep blue accents. Beneath her right shoulder, an icy blue vision was pinned with a feathered ornament, exuding an air of elegance. She held a dark blue, intricately engraved great sword in both hands, pointing its edge directly at Luo Qing with a gaze full of vigilance. Luo Qing glanced down at his outfit and immediately understood the misunderstanding. To prepare for unexpected combat, he had donned his rarely worn Fatui uniform before heading to Tenchikaku. The dark gold insignia of an executive glinted conspicuously at his waist in the sunlight. I'm not actually. Before he could explain, the woman scoffed. Humph! Save your excuses for my sword. With that, she swung her great sword at him without hesitation. +1 frustration value from Luo Qing. Watching the woman charge toward him, Luo Qing shook his head. He might not have been able to defeat the Raiden Shogun, but surely he could handle her. You're asking for it, he thought, resigned. The next moment, in the woman's vision, the dangerous Fatui agent before her suddenly locked her in a golden gaze. Before she could react, the world spun around her, and screams from her subordinates filled the air. A few minutes later, the entire knight squad was tied up in an intricate mess of ropes, piled together like a sack of potatoes. As for their leader, the vision-wielding swordswoman, she had been given special treatment. Her leather pants, which had perfectly highlighted her figure, were removed, and her hands and feet were fitted with suppression cuffs to block the flow of elemental energy. Let me ask you something, Luo Qing began, glancing at the bound knights beside him. He sat cross-legged in front of the woman and gestured to the still healing wound on his abdomen. His tone was calm but pointed. I'm already this badly injured, and you all thought it'd be a good idea to finish me off? Don't you think that's a bit over the top? The woman glared at him, her lips tightly pursed. After a long silence, she finally spat out a few words. You're a Fatui agent. What kind of logic is that? Luo Qing's temper flared. Why was it that everywhere he went, people insisted on treating him like some sort of villain? Did he really look that shady? Fatui agents deserve to have swords pointed at them, huh? That it? Humph! The woman scoffed again before spitting at him. Luo Qing leaned back to dodge, slightly startled. Does she even understand her situation? Does she realize who's in charge here? Despite being tied up like this, she still acted so defiant. Was she begging for trouble? You, come here, Luo Qing muttered. Grabbing the rope around the back of her neck, he lifted her effortlessly. Her smooth, bare feet wiggled helplessly in the air, the cuffs gleaming against her pale skin. Then, in full view of her bound squad mates, Luo Qing slung her over his shoulder and carried her behind a dense thicket nearby. The knights' eyes widened in disbelief. Their expressions screamed, "What the hell is happening?" After throwing the woman onto the ground amidst the bushes, Luo Qing made sure they were out of sight of her subordinates. Sitting cross-legged before her, he said in a calm voice, "Now, I'm going to ask questions, and you're going to answer them. Understand?" While Luo Qing had a rough idea of his current location, Teyvat's map was vast and unfamiliar to him in many places. It was best to confirm the details. The woman's eyes darted nervously, but she quickly forced herself to appear composed, glaring at him with defiance. She reminded Luo Qing of a short-haired blue kitten, puffed up in a futile attempt to appear threatening despite its fear. "What's your name?" he asked. No answer. "All right, you asked for it." With a flick of his wrist, her white jacket disintegrated into shreds, exposing the deep black bodysuit underneath and her snow-white shoulders. "Next time, it'll be something else. Let's hope you're wearing enough layers," Luo Qing teased, lightly poking her flat stomach with his finger. "You." The woman gritted her teeth and tried to summon elemental energy. But the suppression cuffs blocked her power, leaving her helpless under the weight of the thick ropes binding her. 3, 2. Luo Qing counted down, curling one finger back with each number. 1. E. Eula Lawrence. She blurted out, turning her face away to avoid meeting his gaze. "See? That wasn't so hard." Luo Qing smiled, patting her head. "Don't touch me!" Eula shouted, jerking her head to push his hand away. Her voice carried back to her bound knights, who now looked even more horrified. "That's our captain!" Their eyes seemed to cry out. "This Fatui agent is shameless." "Next question. Where are we?" Luo Qing continued. He already knew he was in Mondstadt, but without a map of Fatui outposts in the region, he had no idea where to find their forward operating teams. Ideally, he needed to locate a safe spot to set up another teleportation toilet and get back to Inajima. Of course, the teleportation toilets worked randomly. If EI hadn't destroyed the one in the plain of Euthymia, there was still a 50% chance he could end up back there. The idea of running into EI again sent a shiver down his spine. For now, he just needed a safe place to regroup. Eula remained silent. 3, 2. Whispering Woods, she mumbled reluctantly. "Why do you only behave when I start counting?" Luo Qing sighed. Many noble women seemed to value their dignity above all else, and using that to threaten them often proved more effective than brute force. "How far is Mondstadt city from here?" 3. On foot, half a month's journey. Eula lowered her head, biting her lip. She had never felt as humiliated as she did now. She swore she would remember this grudge. "Half a month, hey." Luo Qing muttered, weighing his options. Heading straight back would mean leaving critical supplies unattended in the wild. On the other hand, the trek to Mondstadt city's safe house would waste precious time. Still, with the Inajima situation wrapped up, he figured Lumen could handle the rest. And besides, there was still that 50% chance of landing back in the plain of Euthymia. No way he was risking another run-in with EI. Lost in thought, Luo Qing's gaze drifted back to Eula. What are you planning to do?" "Take a guess," Luo Qing replied, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. Chapter 163, This Trainee Fatui Harbinger is Too Unreliable. 163. Eula shivered and instinctively shuffled backward, trying to put more distance between herself and Luo Qing. She was still pure and untainted. How could she let this guy do anything to her in a place like this? But before she could move any further, Luo Qing's arm wrapped around her slender waist, hoisting her over his shoulder. "What are you doing? Put me down!" Eula thrashed, attempting to headbutt Luo Qing, but it was like hitting a solid rock. He didn't budge an inch. "Why are you panicking? Did I say I'd do anything to you?" Luo Qing grumbled, clearly annoyed by her squirming. "If you keep this up, I'll spank you." "You wouldn't dare. Put me down right now, or I'll Before she could finish her threat, a sharp sting blossomed on her rear. You. Eula's cheeks flushed a deep red as shame and fury surged within her. "Still want to cause trouble?" Luo Qing asked, his tone casual but with a hint of warning. Eula clenched her lips tightly, her face still burning with indignation, but she didn't dare make another sound. Resigned, she let Luo Qing carry her out of the bushes and back to where her captured knights were bound. "Sorry, folks, but I'm borrowing your Captain Eula for a while," Luo Qing announced with a smirk. He bent down to pick up her discarded leather pants, tucking them into his bag. Then, he stowed away her intricately crafted great sword into his system inventory. The sword was pretty decent. Now, it was his. He turned to the bound knights, flashing a grin. As for the rest of you, just stay here and enjoy a little rest, all right. Without waiting for a reply, Luo Qing carried Yula away, disappearing into a nearby ravine under the shocked gazes of her subordinates. The ropes he had used to tie them up were only slightly thicker than average. If they couldn't free themselves, they might as well starve out here. The knights watched Luo Qing's retreating figure in stunned silence, exchanging incredulous glances. They had surrounded a lone Fatui agent. How had things ended up like this? Where was that guy taking Captain Yula? What was he planning to do to her? Remembering Yula's flushed face earlier, the pained cries from the bushes, and the remnants of her torn white jacket, the knights grew increasingly distressed. That's Captain Yula. Damn it! Meanwhile, following the directions Yula had begrudgingly given him, Luo Qing traveled for an entire day before finally setting her down. Lighting a small campfire, he decided to rest and replenish his energy before continuing on. From his system inventory, he pulled out a few fish he had caught in Inajima and began roasting them over the flames, carefully sprinkling them with his precious stash of barbecue seasoning. Before long, the mouth-watering aroma wafted through the air. Grr! Yula's stomach betrayed her with a loud growl as the scent reached her nose. Here, Luo Qing said, offering her one of the grilled fish. Yula sniffed at it but quickly turned her head away with a cold snort. As if, after the humiliation she endured earlier, how could she trust him not to poison the food? Suit yourself, Luo Qing muttered, unfazed. He wasn't in the mood to coddle her. If not for the supreme vitality pills in his inventory, he might have actually fallen victim to her squad's earlier ambush. By his reckoning, Yula was practically a life-and-death enemy at this point. He had no reason to be nice. Soon, he finished the entire batch of grilled fish by himself, leaving behind only a pile of white bones. As a final touch, he tossed the fish bones right in front of Yula, ensuring she could still savor the lingering aroma. All right, break's over. Let's get moving, Luo Qing announced, stretching lazily before making a move to hoist her over his shoulder again. Carrying her was a hassle, but with her hands and feet bound, she couldn't walk on her own. He'd have to keep lugging her around until they reached Mondstadt. Once he saw the city, he could just drop her off. We're leaving already? Yula stammered, caught off guard. She had been hoping to escape while Luo Qing slept through the night. Oh, you thought I'd set up camp and give you a chance to run off? Luo Qing smirked knowingly. Dream on. Caught red-handed, Yula glared at him in frustration before lowering her head in silence. Ignoring her sour mood, Luo Qing prepared to lift her again when she hesitantly pulled her legs back and muttered, "Give me my shoes. I can walk by myself." Oh. Luo Qing raised an eyebrow. Carrying her around was annoying, so he didn't mind her suggestion. With a flick of his hand, he retrieved her leather pants and high heels from his inventory, tossing them in front of her. "Lead me to Mondstadt, and don't even think about running." "Got it. What do you even want in Mondstadt?" Yula asked coldly. "Come on, don't be stupid," Luo Qing replied, poking her forehead with his finger. "Use that little brain of yours. I'm a Fatui executive. If I wanted to harm Mondstadt, do you think I'd need your help to get there?" The jab at her intelligence stung, and Yula's irritation deepened. Another grudge to settle, she thought grimly. She realized she had been keeping track of quite a few grudges today. Hopefully, she wouldn't forget any. Humph, doesn't matter. I'll make him pay for all of it later. No running. You hear me? Luo Qing warned, pointing a finger at her as he prepared to unlock her suppression cuffs. When his fingers brushed her feet, Yula instinctively jerked back, making it impossible for him to fit the key properly. "Stop moving. I can't get the key in." With a huff, Luo Qing grabbed her foot firmly and quickly unlocked the cuffs. "There. Put your pants and shoes back on. We're leaving." Yula remained silent, her frustration bubbling beneath the surface. She slipped on her leather pants and high heels, testing the fit before glancing at Luo Qing. "You're traveling at night?" she asked. "Mondstadt's wilderness is crawling with monsters after dark, not to mention the Abyss Order. Are you?" Before she could finish, Luo Qing cut her off with a look that screamed, "Are you dumb? You think I'd be scared of some hilly churls or abyss mages? he asked, deadpan. Yula fell silent, recalling how easily Luo Qing had defeated her entire squad earlier. It was clear neither the Abyss Order nor the monsters would pose any threat to him. Are all Fatui executives this ridiculously powerful? She wondered. Stop daydreaming. Let's go. Oh okay. Chapter 164, This Trainee Fatui Harbinger is too unreliable. 164. Several days passed. At last, Luo Qing saw the outline of Mondstadt city. The grand city on the lake, with its towering cathedral of Favonius and the statue of the Enmo Archon, exuded a mix of solemnity and serenity. Unlike the bustling prosperity of Liyue or the oppressive atmosphere of Inajima, Mondstadt radiated a sense of freedom and ease. As the starting nation of the game, Mondstadt carried a sense of familiarity for Luo Qing, almost as if he had been here before. Well, this is where we part ways, Luo Qing said, his tone casual as he gave Yula a once-over. Thanks for guiding me these past few days. You can go reunite with your little squad now. Yula glanced at the distant silhouette of Mondstadt and muttered, why are you going to Mondstadt? I've already told you I got lost and need a place to stay, Luo Qing replied, tapping her forehead with his finger. You make it sound like I'm some big bad villain. Stop being so hostile toward people all the time, will you? Yula stayed silent for a long moment before muttering, I told you not to poke my head. Throughout their journey, she'd felt like Luo Qing was constantly treating her like an idiot, poking her head as if she were a clueless child. And with her hands cuffed, unable to use elemental power, she couldn't fight back. I'm going to Mondstadt too, Yula said softly. Why? To get the Knights of Favonius to come after me. Luo Qing smirked and poked her forehead again. Careful now, try it, and you'll regret it. Yula bit her lip, saying nothing. Truthfully, she had planned to report Luo Qing's presence to the Knights. If you're going back, you're on your own. I don't have time to slow down for you, Luo Qing said, his golden eyes beginning to glow as he prepared to activate his temporal zero ability to hasten his journey. From where they stood, Mondstadt was only faintly visible in the distance. It would take at least another day of walking to reach the city. Luo Qing had only brought Yula along to guide him. Now that they were almost there, he needed to set up his teleportation device in the safe house as soon as possible. No point wasting time traveling with her. Just as he was about to leave, Yula suddenly called out in a panic. Wait! What now? Luo Qing turned back, puzzled, to see Yula fidgeting awkwardly. At least unlock the cuffs before you go. Oh, right. Forgot about that. My bad, Luo Qing said, scratching his head. Remembering that he'd kept her hands cuffed the entire journey to prevent her from escaping or causing trouble, he stepped behind her and pulled her hands forward. As he worked on unlocking the cuffs, his gaze unintentionally lingered on her back and the curves accentuated by her leather pants and tight-fitting clothes. Combined with her unique fragrance, the view was distracting. Yula turned her head to glance back at him. Aren't you done yet? Ahem, almost, Luo Qing coughed, focusing back on the task. Finally, with a soft click, the cuffs came off. Yula flexed her fingers, feeling the flow of cryo-elemental energy return to her. All right. Bye now. Wait. Hey. Luo Qing paused, his expression one of mild exasperation. Why can't she say everything at once? If you claim you mean no harm to Mondstadt. Yula hesitated, her voice barely audible. Then give me back my sword. The deep blue greatsword, intricately engraved, was her most prized possession. She never went on a mission without it, taking care to polish and maintain it regularly. But a few days ago, during her defeat, Luo Qing had claimed it as a trophy, and she hadn't seen it since. Although asking for it back was humiliating, she had no choice. She simply wasn't strong enough to take it back by force. To her surprise, Luo Qing suddenly laughed, leaning in close so their eyes met at the same level. He poked her forehead again and said with a smirk, I think you misunderstood something. Misunderstood, what? I really don't bear any malice toward Mondstadt, he said lightly. Then give me. But I bear you plenty of malice, Luo Qing interrupted, golden light flashing in his eyes as he vanished from sight. My sword. +1 frustration value from Yula. Yula slumped to the ground, her expression a mix of despair and fury, tears threatening to spill over. That sword was her most treasured weapon. Without it, could she even call herself a knight anymore? After sitting in a daze for a while, she suddenly realized Luo Qing must have gone to Mondstadt. Scrambling to her feet, she began running toward the city. Luo Qing, give me back my sword. Meanwhile, using Temporal Zero, Luo Qing reached Mondstadt's gates in under an hour. With the storm terror crisis resolved, the city had regained its usual laid-back atmosphere. Merchants bustled in and out of the city, and the bridge was crowded with travelers. Mondstadt and Liyue had always been on good terms. As someone with Liyue blood, Luo Qing easily entered the city without facing any questioning, especially after swapping his Fatui uniform for Liyue attire. Following the main road for a short distance, he soon spotted the Adventurers Guild counter and its ever-polite receptionist, Catherine. Ad Astra Abyssosk. Welcome to the Adventurers Guild, Catherine greeted him warmly. Find me a safe house, Luo Qing said, flashing the insignia of a Fatui Harbinger from his pocket before quickly tucking it away. Understood. Please wait a moment. Catherine's tone shifted as she began typing commands into her terminal. Moments later, she handed Luo Qing a set of keys. Your room is ready. Is it discreet? Luo Qing asked, examining the keys and the attached note that listed the address. Snezhnia maintained a network of agents and safe houses across the 7 nations for contingencies like this. No one will disturb you, Catherine assured him. Good. Get back to your usual work, Luo Qing said, pocketing the keys as he set off toward the address. Late at night. After a grueling day of running, Eula finally reached Mondstadt. Completely drained, she dragged herself to the headquarters of the Knights of Favonius, barely managing to stand. Eula, what happened to you? Jean asked, looking up from her desk. Eula had burst into her office in tattered clothes, her jacket missing entirely. The sight left Jean momentarily stunned. There's trouble. Eula panted, collapsing into a chair and pouring herself a large cup of tea, which she downed in one gulp. After catching her breath, she continued. A Fatui Harbinger has infiltrated Mondstadt, and he stole my sword. What? Chapter 165, This Trainee Fatui Harbinger is too unreliable. 165. Tenshikaku. Ei sat atop the dais, her eyes closed as she meditated. But the deep furrow of her brows betrayed her inner turmoil. Ever since Lumen and Ye Miko persuaded her, Ei had left the plane of euthymia, using the Raiden Shogun's body to personally oversee Inazuma's governance. As for the Shogun's soul, it now resided within the consciousness space. With the Vision Hunt Decree and the Sakoku Decree abolished, peace had been made with the resistance. Inazuma seemed to be moving toward a brighter future. But for Ei, there was still a hurdle she had yet to cross. His death, it pained me as well. Ei's voice was soft, almost a whisper, as her brow furrowed further. But at that time, You told this body to eliminate all obstacles to eternity, planting within it the obsession to kill him. You made this body execute him. And now, you've abandoned the pursuit of eternity, choosing instead to carry the wishes of Inazuma's people forward. The Raiden Shogun's voice echoed in her mind. Then tell me, what meaning is there in this body's actions and his death? Ei was momentarily at a loss for words. Since Luo Qing's disappearance, the Raiden Shogun had unearthed the hidden affection buried beneath her obsession. Within the consciousness space, memories of her and Ei's choices came flooding back. Created for the will of eternity, the Raiden Shogun had never experienced emotions, always acting in accordance with Ei's will to govern Inazuma and maintain its unchanging eternity. But Luo Qing's presence had stirred something within her mechanical body, a spark of human emotion. For the first time, she felt she had something to seek beyond the will of eternity. Ei had insisted that all obstacles to eternity be removed, and Luo Qing could not be allowed to remain. Despite the pain it caused her, the Shogun had suppressed her feelings and erased all memories of Luo Qing, even implanting a murderous obsession toward him. It culminated in the battle at Tenshikaku, where the Raiden Shogun pierced Luo Qing's chest, watching him vanish into starlight. And now? Persuaded by a traveler and a dear friend, Ei had abandoned the pursuit of eternity, taken up the people's wishes, and even commandeered the Shogun's body. So, what had the Shogun's actions and sacrifices amounted to? Pointless wear and tear? You are unworthy to use this body. Suddenly, Ei's eyes snapped open as she clutched her head, gasping for breath. Is it her again? Ye Miko's voice came from nearby as she approached with a knowing look. Ei nodded. As I thought, even this puppet has its moments of rebellion, Ye Miko said with a light laugh, placing a comforting hand on Ei's shoulder. You know, maybe you should get out for a bit. It might do you some good. Perhaps, I murmured in agreement. Mondstadt. After resting briefly in the safe house, Luo Qing waited until nightfall. He carefully shut the doors and windows before retrieving his teleportation toilet and setting it up in the lavatory. Please, not the plane of euthymia. He muttered under his breath. By his calculations, I was likely out of the plane of euthymia by now, wandering in Ajima like a country bumpkin. If so, the plane might now house the Raiden Shogun or, ideally, no one at all. Of course, there was also the chance that I had destroyed or discarded the toilet, which would redirect him to the safe house's alternate teleportation point on the rafters. Since I'm in Mondstadt. Luo Qing clasped his hands together, muttering, Barbados, please let me end up anywhere but the plane of euthymia. I'll even burn you some good booze later. Taking a deep breath, he sat down on the toilet. He was prepared. If he did end up in the plane and faced I or the Raiden Shogun, he'd burn through all his emotion-manipulating item cards and make a quick escape. His vision twisted and went dark. When it cleared, a wooden rafter greeted him. Barbados, drinks are on me next time, Luo Qing exhaled in relief. He had successfully teleported to the Inajima safe house. Below the rafters was his old room. Just as he prepared to jump down, he heard voices in the corridor, causing him to retreat into the shadows. Lady Ayaka, it's not appropriate for you to do this yourself. But we couldn't find any of Luo Qing's subordinates or colleagues. If I don't do this, his soul won't find peace, came Kamisato Ayaka's soft reply. But Luo Qing was from Snezhnaya. Fine, please go ahead. I'll wait outside. The wooden floor creaked under the sound of Ayaka's footsteps as she entered Luo Qing's room. Her eyes were red and puffy, her face streaked with tears, evidence of a recent cry. Luo Qing. She murmured his name, then began rummaging through his belongings, carefully collecting his personal items. From his perch, Luo Qing quickly realized what she was doing. She intended to create a cenotaph for him. He had planned to wait until Ayaka left before revealing himself, but she didn't leave. Instead, she lay down on his futon, clutching his pillow tightly. Luo Qing. Her soft sobs filled the room. Ah! Luo Qing sighed, shaking his head. I and the Raiden Shogun's reactions to his survival were still unknown. For all he knew, they'd come at him with swords the moment they found out. Luo Qing had intended to sneak his subordinates out of Inajima and return only after becoming stronger. But Ayaka's quiet crying tugged at his heart. After a long pause, he finally jumped down. All right, that's enough crying. Luo Qing, W.A. Ayaka's eyes flew open as she saw him standing before her, completely unscathed. Overcome with joy, she opened her mouth to shout, but Luo Qing quickly covered it with his hand. Shh. He made a silencing gesture, and Ayaka hurriedly nodded. Once she calmed down, Luo Qing let go. Luo Qing, you're alive. She whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. Of course. Your mentor isn't that easy to kill, Luo Qing joked. Before he could say more, Ayaka threw her arms around his waist, burying her face in his chest. You're alive, you're really alive. Yeah, I'm alive. Luo Qing gently patted her head, his gaze softening with warmth. Chapter 166, This Trainee Fatui Harbinger is Too Unreliable. 166. Ayaka, isn't this hug lasting a bit too long? Luo Qing spoke softly, glancing down at the girl in his arms. Nearly 10 minutes had passed, and Kamisato Ayaka still showed no sign of letting go. The embrace was way too tight. Ah! I'm sorry. Ayaka quickly sprang back, lowering her head as a faint blush spread across her cheeks. She had never been this close to a boy before, let alone for so long. It was starting to get a bit sweaty. It's fine, Luo Qing said with a slight shake of his head before continuing. Ayaka, can I ask you to keep this a secret? Hey! Ayaka blinked in confusion. The fact that I'm still alive. Don't tell anyone, let this stay just between the two of us, okay? Why? Ayaka tilted her head, clearly puzzled. From Goro and the others, she had learned about Luo Qing's role on the Tatarasuna front lines. By single-handedly holding back the Raiden Shogun, Luo Qing had bought valuable time for Lumen and the resistance. He was a hero, a savior. Surely, he deserved the gratitude and admiration of the people. Besides, with the Shogun having repealed the Vision Hunt and Sakoku decrees, there was no reason for her to remain hostile toward him. Are you afraid of the shogun? Ayaka asked hesitantly. More or less, Luo Qing replied with a nod. Then, holding out his pinky, he added gently, please, Ayaka? Let's make this our little secret, just the two of us. Ayaka stared at his extended hand, hesitating briefly before linking her pinky with his. It had been years since she last made a childish pinky promise like this, but, if it was with Luo Qing, she didn't really mind. Their pinkies intertwined, they shook once before pressing their thumbs together lightly. For some reason, the simple gesture filled Ayaka's heart with joy. All right, Ayaka, I'll see you next time, Luo Qing said with a soft smile, ruffling her hair as he rose to his feet. He glanced out the window, ready to track down his four subordinates. Watching his retreating back, Ayaka suddenly felt a wave of unease. She blurted out in a panic, Luo Qing, are you leaving Inajima? If the shogun still harbored hostility toward him, fleeing Inajima might be his only safe option. I'm not planning to leave just yet. Why do you ask? Luo Qing replied, his expression curious. Ayaka lowered her head, unsure how to articulate her fear that he might disappear without a word. Don't worry, Luo Qing said reassuringly, his voice warm as he gently patted her head. If I ever leave Inajima, I'll make sure to tell you first, okay? Okay. Ayaka's cheeks flushed as she leaned into his hand, letting him ruffle her hair. All right, Ayaka. See you next time. See you next time, Ayaka replied with a sweet smile. In the next instant, Luo Qing's figure vanished from the room. After he left, Ayaka's somber expression lightened considerably, and she even found herself smiling foolishly at times. She glanced at the collection of Luo Qing's belongings she had gathered earlier. Originally, she had planned to build a cenotaph for him, but now that Luo Qing was alive and well and had sworn her to secrecy, she wasn't sure what to do anymore. Do I still build it? Elsewhere in Inajima City, Luo Qing walked through the streets with his hood pulled low, concealing his face. It had been several days since his staged death, and the damage from the battle at Tenchikaku had already been repaired. Without the Vision Hunt and Sakoku decrees, the people of Inajima seemed noticeably more relaxed, as though a great weight had been lifted from their shoulders. Luo Qing's subordinates, along with Rosalind, had been hiding in the wilderness for quite some time. To reward them, he planned to buy some food and treats. He wasn't too worried about being recognized. Few people in Inajima knew him by face. As long as he avoided familiar faces, he should be fine. While waiting at a street vendor for his order, Luo Qing suddenly felt a familiar presence behind him. Turning his head, he spotted Ei and Lumen strolling through the streets together, looking leisurely as they browsed the stalls. Why are they here? Luo Qing lowered his hood further, pretending nothing was amiss. Then, with a flick of his thoughts, he activated the simulated mask to alter his aura and avoid detection by the Raiden Shogun. Hurry up, master! I'm in a rush, Luo Qing urged the vendor in a low voice, keeping an eye on Lumen and Ei's movements. Almost done. The vendor replied cheerfully, though he couldn't help but feel puzzled. Isn't this person a man? Why does their voice sound like a woman's? Moments later, the vendor handed over the order. Luo Qing grabbed it, left a pouch of mora, and quickly slipped away. He had just left when Lumen and Ei approached the stall. Hey, miss, you forgot your change. Oh, Shogun-sama. The vendor waved the mora pouch after Luo Qing, only to pause and bow respectfully when he noticed Ei. What would you like, Shogun-sama? The vendor asked, his tone deferential. Tricolored dango will suffice, Ei replied softly, though her gaze lingered in the direction Luo Qing had gone. What happened just now? Well, Shogun-sama, the previous customer left in a hurry without waiting for their change. Must have been something urgent, the vendor explained. Lumen followed Ei's gaze, her eyes narrowing as she observed the hurried figure in the crowd. The person carried a bag of dango and moved quickly, as though indeed pressed for time. That person seems to be in a real rush, Paimon remarked, crossing her arms. They even left behind all that mora. You could buy tons of dango with that. Lumen started to turn away but paused, her eyes drawn to the person's wrist. The figure's hand, holding the dango bag, was adorned with a blue and red woven string eerily similar to the one she had seen Ganyu and Chenhe wear. That's... Lumen's brows furrowed as a sense of unease crept over her. Excuse me, Shogun-sama, I need to leave for a moment, she said hurriedly. Paimon, let's go. Hey! But we haven't even eaten yet. Paimon protested, confused. She glanced apologetically at Ei before flying after Lumen. Slow down. I can't keep up. And seriously, can't this wait until after dessert? That red string. Lumen muttered under her breath, her gaze locked on the retreating figure. Could that person be? Before she could finish, the figure suddenly vanished into the crowd, leaving her stunned. Chapter 167, This Trainee Fatui Harbinger is too unreliable. 167. Jinju Forest Hidden Shelter. Within the serene, bluish woods, a small cave nestled at the base of a rocky hill served as the group's hideout. Around a modest campfire, Natalia and the others sat, chatting in low voices as they warmed themselves. From deeper within the cave, however, the anguished cries of a woman echoed intermittently. The group glanced toward the source of the sound, their expressions heavy with worry. After a while, Teresa emerged from the depths of the cave. Her once pristine face was now smudged with soot and grime. Not even soaking her works? Natalia asked, her brows furrowed. Teresa shook her head as she slumped down by the fire. She barely lasted a minute in the water before it evaporated. The entire bucket burned up too. No other way, then. Natalia sighed, lowering her head in frustration. Lord Luo Qing never mentioned this, that Lady Rosalind could end up like this. Since the battle at Tenchikaku, they had taken refuge in this part of Jinju Forest. Its dense woods made it easy to get lost without a guide, making it an ideal hiding spot. But shortly after they arrived, Rosalind, whom Luo Qing had tasked them with protecting, began to exhibit strange symptoms. Flames engulfed her body, her blood glowing like molten lava, threatening to consume her entirely. They had tried everything to suppress the flames, but nothing worked. At this rate, Rosalind would be reduced to ash before Luo Qing returned. Initially, their biggest concern had been how to get Rosalind to cooperate. Instead, she was remarkably compliant, a stark contrast to her past demeanor. She endured the searing pain in silence, never once lashing out at them. She remained at the back of the cave, alone, quietly suffering through the torment. What do we do now? Sergei, the burly man of the group, scratched his head. I'd heard that Lady Rosalind was cursed as the Witch of Flames. If not for Her Majesty the Tsaritsa, she'd have burned to death long ago. With her current condition, I doubt she'll last 2 more weeks, Igor said grimly. We either contact the Inajima division and have Lord Scaramouche take over, or we wait here for Lord Luo Qing. Lord Luo Qing. The mention of his name caused the group to fall silent, each bowing their heads. They had stayed hidden in Jinju Forest out of faith that Luo Qing was still alive and would return for them. But as the days dragged on, their hopes began to waver. Let's wait a few more days. I'm sure Lord Luo Qing will come for us. Teresa murmured, her voice trembling as tears glistened in the firelight. All right, Natalia said after a pause, her expression softening. The others exchanged looks, their worry evident. Teresa, the cheerful Electro-Chechen mage whom Luo Qing had rescued from Gaiun Stone Forest, had grown uncharacteristically somber since witnessing the events at Tenchikaku. More often than not, her eyes carried traces of tears. Fine. We'll wait another week, Natalia finally decided. But if Lord Luo Qing hasn't returned by then, we'll have to take Lady Rosalind to the Inajima division. Understood. With heavy hearts, they sat in silence, staring into the flames. Could someone as strong as Lord Luo Qing really fall to a god? Their grim thoughts were interrupted by a noise outside the cave. Someone's here, stay alert. Natalia ordered in a hushed tone. The group quickly stood, pressing themselves against the walls with weapons drawn, their eyes fixed on the cave entrance. Under the moonlight, a shadow stretched across the ground, growing longer as a figure approached. Fingers tightened on triggers as the silhouette neared the firelight, revealing a familiar face. Why are you pointing guns at me? Planning a mutiny? That familiar tone, that teasing smirk, it was unmistakable. Lord Luo Qing. Their weapons clattered to the ground as all 4 rushed toward him. Teresa moved the fastest, practically launching herself into his arms. Lord Luo Qing, you're really alive. Why? She buried her face in his chest, her tears flowing freely. Do I look like someone who dies easily? Luo Qing glanced down at Teresa, who was clinging to him like a limpet. Normally, he would have scrunched his nose in disdain and promptly tossed her aside. But seeing her sobbing so pitifully, he decided to let it slide. However, after a while, he noticed Teresa wasn't letting go. Worse, she began sniffing him like a bloodhound. Teresa, what are you doing? She tilted her head up, her tearful eyes meeting his as she whispered, You smell like another woman. You've got a death wish, hey. Luo Qing grabbed her by the back of her neck and set her aside before turning to Natalia. Where's Rosalind? She's deeper inside, Natalia said, pointing toward the cave's depths, her expression grave. But her condition is not good. Luo Qing's gaze followed the direction of her finger. From the cave's depths, the sound of agonized screams echoed, accompanied by flickering shadows cast by the flames. Wait here. Leave the rest to me. Yes, Lord Luo Qing, they answered in unison. Luo Qing ventured deeper into the cave. In the heart of the cavern, surrounded by a pile of charred debris, Rosalind knelt on the ground, her body racked with pain. Her veins glowed with a molten gold light, as though magma coursed through her instead of blood. Her alabaster skin was fractured and burning, with flames licking out from the cracks like a doll tossed into a furnace. Sensing his presence, Rosalind lifted her head, her twisted features barely masking her torment. What do you want from me now? She rasped weakly. Ever since the day Luo Qing had fused that strange purple orb into her body, a compulsion had taken root in her mind, a singular, unshakable desire to obey his every command. Rosaline Kruzichka Lohe falter, the person you once were is dead. And the person you'll become. Luo Qing raised a hand, summoning a glacial blue vision. Frosty energy swirled around it like an icy vortex. From now on, you'll live for me. With a flick of his wrist, he tossed the vision onto Rosaline's chest. The immense cryo-energy surged into her body, merging with her. The flames consuming her flesh subsided, leaving her pale and broken body exposed. She now resembled a ghostly figure from the depths of hell, kneeling on the ground and gasping for breath. This look doesn't suit you, Luo Qing said coolly, tossing her a supreme vitality pill. Eat it. Yes. Rosalind whispered hoarsely. Chapter 168, This Trainee Fatui Harbinger is too unreliable. 168. Rosalind hesitated for a moment before taking the fist-sized pill Luo Qing handed her. Slowly, she placed it in her mouth and began to chew. Moments later, her shattered and burnt body began to heal visibly. The charred blackened remnants of her skin fell away, replaced by soft, unblemished flesh that was smooth as a newborn's. Even her long-lost right eye regenerated, restoring her vision completely. Time seemed to stand still as her transformation unfolded. When it was over, Rosaline's body was as flawless as polished jade, a picture of vitality and perfection. How is this possible? She touched her newly restored right eye, disbelief etched on her face. The crude-looking pill had not only repaired the fire-ravaged parts of her body but also regenerated what she thought was lost forever. She felt like a newborn, her body brimming with life. How did you do this? Rosalind looked up at Luo Qing, confusion and shock in her eyes. You could at least show some gratitude, Luo Qing said with a smirk, tapping her on the forehead. From now on, call me master. Rosalind remained silent, her gaze conflicted. After a brief internal struggle, she lowered her head, compelled by the binding obsession within her. Yes. Master. Now that's satisfying, Luo Qing said with a contented sigh. He'd been waiting for the day he could bring Rosalind under his command. Also. With a thought, Luo Qing summoned a set of clothes from his system inventory and tossed them to her. Put these on. Unless, of course, you prefer walking around naked. Rosalind, already weak from her ordeal, had been unable to control the flames consuming her. As a result, every piece of clothing Natalia had dressed her in had been incinerated. Now, her flawless body stood fully exposed, a sight that even Luo Qing couldn't help but steal a few glances at. Yes. Rosalind accepted the clothes, casting a sidelong glance at Luo Qing. Noticing he wasn't turning away, her cheeks flushed slightly. Just put them on, Luo Qing interrupted, making no move to leave the room. Yes. Her words cut off, Rosalind reluctantly began dressing in front of him, her face tinged with embarrassment. The outfit Luo Qing provided was a standard Fatui female uniform far less elegant than her former regal attire. It fit tightly across her chest, reminding her that she was no longer an esteemed harbinger but just another soldier. Not bad. It suits you, Luo Qing said with an approving nod. You knew I would die in that duel, didn't you? Rosalind asked softly, her head bowed to avoid meeting his eyes. Sharp as always. Want me to give you a little reward for that insight? Luo Qing teased. Oh, and by the way, if you call me anything other than master again, I'll have to teach you a lesson. +1 frustration value from Rosalind. Why did you save me? She asked, her voice tinged with sadness. Dying would have been a release for her, a way to escape her torment. It's simple. Luo Qing crossed his arms and replied matter-of-factly. There aren't many people on this continent with decent power. I couldn't let the Tsaritsa hog them all, could I? You. Rosalind started to retort but stopped herself, lowering her head again. What does master plan to do? Ah, you're learning. Good, Luo Qing said, smiling with satisfaction. It seemed the Master Ball's effects worked exactly as described. No one with weaker mental strength than him could resist the servitude contract. I don't plan to do much. I just want to expand my organization, you see. Luo Qing tapped her on the forehead. The 8th Harbinger, Signora, is dead. From now on, Rosalind, you'll be like Natalia and the others working for me. Understood? Yes. Master. Rosalind bowed her head obediently. Good. Now, let's introduce you to your new colleagues. Luo Qing turned and began walking toward the cave's entrance. Rosalind glanced at his retreating figure, then at the icy vision in her hand. It was a genuine vision, unlike the counterfeit delusions granted by the Fatui. Visions were divine blessings, bestowed only on those chosen by the gods. Even the Tsaritsa had merely given her elemental power through a delusion to suppress her flames. Luo Qing, however, had handed her a real cryovision with ease. For the first time, Rosalind found herself questioning everything she thought she knew about Luo Qing. Wasn't he just an orphan picked up by Arlecchino at the House of the Hearth? How does he possess such power? Why are you just standing there? Hurry up, Luo Qing called, snapping her out of her thoughts. Yes. Rosalind murmured, following him out of the cave. All right, everyone, gather around. Luo Qing said cheerfully, patting Rosalind on the shoulder as they emerged. Meet Rosalind, our newest addition to this happy little family. Let's give her a warm welcome. The group glanced at Rosalind, their expressions a mix of wariness and reluctance as they clapped half-heartedly. Truth be told, they had eavesdropped on Luo Qing and Rosalind's entire conversation. They still couldn't quite wrap their heads around the fact that their leader had made her the 8th Harbinger call him master. Apparently, Luo Qing had a thing for this kind of arrangement. Lord Luo Qing, Teresa hesitantly raised her hand. Having been the lowest-ranking member of the group, she often found herself on the receiving end of teasing. She had secretly hoped Luo Qing would bring in new recruits for her to boss around. And now? Rosalind's rank is? Teresa asked, her eyes gleaming with hope. Oh, just as you're thinking, Teresa, Luo Qing replied with a grin, patting Rosalind on the shoulder again. From today, Rosalind is officially your junior. Wah, hey. The former 8th Harbinger, the superior of all superiors, was now her subordinate. It was almost too much for her to process. Outskirts of Inajima City. Ei knelt on one knee, clutching her head with her right hand, her face contorted in pain. Ei, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell again? Paimon asked worriedly. Throughout their journey, Ei had shown signs of discomfort multiple times, especially after battles. They had just defeated a pack of rift wolves, helping some wandering spirits pass on peacefully. Ei, are you all right? Lumen asked. I can't move my body. Ei's voice was strained, her expression filled with anguish. It seems she no longer wants me to use this body. She? Lumen asked hesitantly. You mean the Shogun? Yes. Ei replied softly. It seems I must face her. Lumen, could I ask you to accompany me to Yashiori Island? What for? To settle everything with the Shogun. To sever the past, and embrace the future. Chapter 169, This Trainee Fatui Harbinger is too unreliable. 169. Yashiori Island. Having successfully brought Rosalind under his wing, Luo Qing no longer had any reason to linger in Inajima. Retrieving the Raiden Shogun's Gnosis had been Rosalind's task, not his. He was nothing more than a supporting character in her mission, a mere tool. If anyone were to face blame, it wouldn't fall on him. Besides, the Gnosis had already been taken to Samura by Scaramouche. Luo Qing couldn't be implicated even if someone wanted to. Now, the only matter of importance left to Luo Qing was returning to Snezhnia for an audience with Her Majesty the Tsaritsa, where he would officially be appointed as the 12th Harbinger. Not that Luo Qing cared much about the title. He was more interested in seeing what the Tsaritsa looked like. As he debated whether to laze around in Ajima a little longer or bid farewell to Kamisato Ayaka and head straight to Snezhnia, Luo Qing and his group had been enjoying a makeshift vacation in Jinju Forest. At first, Natalia and the others expected Rosalind to be as haughty and domineering as ever, looking down her nose at them, speaking curtly, and constantly making them feel inferior. But after just a few days, they noticed a startling transformation. Thanks to Luo Qing's training, Rosalind had become inexplicably obedient. She followed his every word without protest, addressing him sweetly as master. Her newfound gentleness was so disarming that Teresa, inspired by Rosalina's behavior, tried calling Luo Qing master a few times herself. The result? A flick to the forehead that left her sulking with a bruise for days. Master, have you made up your mind yet? Natalia approached Luo Qing, sparing a glance at Rosalind, who stood quietly beside him. Headquarters has already ordered the Inajima division to withdraw the troops under Lady Ara, Rosalina's command. They're heading back to Snezhnia. No rush, Natalia, Luo Qing replied, sitting by a small stream in the forest, fishing pole in hand. Moments later, the bobber jerked. Luo Qing pulled back on the rod, reeling in a small fish. Rosalind immediately stepped forward, taking the fish off the hook and placing it into the basket before returning to her quiet post by his side. Natalia gave Rosalind a meaningful look. On the first day of fishing, Rosalind had grumbled endlessly, saying she wasn't meant to be a fisherwoman and refusing to help. But now, she was as docile as a lamb. Ah, the once mighty Lady Signora, Natalia mused. She's been thoroughly shaped into Lord Luo Qing's image. Well, Natalia, what were you saying? Luo Qing turned to her, breaking her thoughts. Master, Igor brought word from headquarters. They've asked for your immediate return to Snezhnia. Her Majesty the Tsaritsa and Lord Pierrot wish to meet with you. Hey! Luo Qing blinked, then glanced at Rosalind. Meeting his gaze, Rosalind bowed her head respectfully. Master, I never spoke in detail about your abilities to Her Majesty or Pierrot. I only mentioned some of your deeds in Liyue. Luo Qing thought for a moment before sighing. All right. If they're insisting, I guess it's time to go back. He stood up, and Rosalind promptly took the fishing rod from him, handing over his coat in one seamless motion. After packing their belongings, the group set off along a forest trail, heading back toward Inajima City to bid farewell to Kamisato Ayaka before returning to Snezhnia. As they walked, Luo Qing suddenly felt a familiar presence. Turning around, he spotted a yellow-haired girl and her floating companion descending from the shadows of the forest canopy. A certain pink-haired trickster fox was accompanying them. Moments later, Lumen noticed his gaze and locked eyes with him. Luo Qing! Lumen shouted, sprinting toward him with arms spread wide, stopping in front of him like a human barricade. You're alive after all. Yo, fancy meeting you here, Luo Qing said nonchalantly, crossing his arms. Rosalind, standing quietly beside him, was wearing an ordinary disguise courtesy of Luo Qing's simulated mask. She blended in perfectly as a random civilian, avoiding any risk of being recognized. As Ye Maiko and Paimon caught up, Paimon hovered in front of Luo Qing, scrutinizing him closely. Luo Qing, why did you fake your death? She demanded. Why? What else was I supposed to do, actually die? Luo Qing retorted, his tone matter of fact. You tricked all of us. Ayaka cried for days because of you. Correction, I wasn't fooled, Ye Maiko interjected with a sly smile. She had witnessed Luo Qing's supposed death firsthand. While she had her suspicions about his connection to Ei and the Raiden Shogun, she had never truly believed he'd perish so easily. After all, watching things play out was far more entertaining. So, what's the plan? Are you going to tell the Shogun and have her come after me again? Luo Qing asked, his arms still crossed. If Lumen or Ye showed any sign of betraying him, he wouldn't hesitate to retaliate. You've got some nerve. Paimon huffed. Do you know what you've caused? Ei and the Shogun are fighting because of you. What? Luo Qing's expression blanked. His subordinates, including Rosalind, exchanged puzzled looks. What did I do? It's because you faked your death. Paimon declared, looking entirely justified. The Shogun believes that if it weren't for EI, she wouldn't have targeted you as an obstacle to eternity. She blames EI for your death. They're fighting in that inner realm place. All because of you. Luo Qing felt his mind grind to a halt. Weren't EI and the Shogun supposed to have resolved their differences? Hadn't they moved past their feelings for him? How had this become about him again? You need to take responsibility. Paimon said, puffing herself up. Excuse me. We're on our way to stop their fight. You should come with us. Maybe if they see you, they'll stop fighting. Luo Qing stared at Paimon as if she were a complete idiot. Let me get this straight, he said, poking her forehead. You want me to help mediate between the two people who almost killed me? Yeah, that sounds real smart. Well, Paimon faltered, unable to argue. Lumen, Luo Qing said, his tone softening. They told you they regret what they did to me, didn't they? Yes. Lumen hesitated. That's why I think, maybe you should come with us. It might really help. Chapter 170, This Trainee Fatui Harbinger is too unreliable. 170. You do make a good point. Luo Qing nodded, as though agreeing with Lumen's reasoning. So, does that mean? But I refuse. +1 frustration value from Lumen. +1 frustration value from Paimon. I'm not about to risk my life for this, thank you very much. Luo Qing crossed his arms with a huff. If they're really fighting because of my death, why don't you just tell them I'm still alive? There's no need for me to go in person, is there? But that's final. Patting Lumen on the shoulder, Luo Qing signaled to his group. Natalia and the others nodded and began to haul their gear down the mountain path. I'm heading back to Snezhnaya. See you around, maybe. Without waiting for their protests, Luo Qing turned on his heel and began walking away, briefly exchanging a knowing glance with Ye Miko as he passed her. Luo Qing, you. Lumen made one last attempt to persuade him, but Ye Miko stopped her with a gentle hand on her arm, a playful smile on her face. Now, forcing someone never ends well. Besides, weren't you on your way to save EI? We should focus on reaching the inner realm. But Lumen glanced at Luo Qing's retreating figure, her thoughts swirling. The last time he said he was returning to Snezhnaya, he showed up in Inajima instead. Could he have another plan this time? Even so, with his refusal so firm, Lumen and Paimon had no choice but to let him go. They continued their journey toward the cave beneath the Grand Narukami Shrine. Elsewhere, Luo Qing and his group emerged from the dense trees of Jinju Forest. Natalia glanced toward the path leading to Inajima City, prepared to continue toward the city gates, when Luo Qing suddenly raised a hand to stop them. You all head straight to Ritu. Master, are you going to? Natalia asked, her tone curious. I'll handle the farewells alone. Luo Qing paused, his voice lowering. Besides, I just remembered, there's still something I need to do. The group exchanged glances before bowing their heads in unison. Yes, Master. We will await you on Ritu. Rosalind remained silent as the others turned to her. Though she now held the lowest rank in their group, her unique dynamic with Luo Qing meant they dared not treat her as an ordinary subordinate. After all, they weren't entirely sure what Luo Qing and Rosalind might be up to when left alone. Rosalind, you too. Wait for me at Ritu, Luo Qing instructed. Yes. Master. Rosalind replied, bowing her head obediently. With that, Luo Qing vanished before their eyes. Grand Narukami Shrine. Changing into attire more befitting a tourist, Luo Qing strolled through the shrine grounds, eventually stopping beneath the sacred sakura tree. It really is beautiful. He gazed up at the towering tree, its pink-purple blossoms swaying gently in the breeze. Even he couldn't help but feel a rare moment of awe. This tree, a miracle of Raiden Makoto's will, had defied time itself, planted in the near future, only to take root in Inajima's distant past. I must say, coming uninvited is rather rude, Luo Qing. A familiar, leisurely voice called out from behind him. Oh, but I did pay my respects with an offering, Luo Qing replied with a smirk, turning to see Ye Miko approaching him. So you're only here to make an offering for good fortune, is that it? Ye teased, standing beside him to admire the sacred sakura. Not quite. I have other matters to attend to, Luo Qing said, his hand brushing against the tree's trunk. This tree, it looks as though it's been here for centuries. And yet, in a sense, it hasn't even been planted yet. Oh! Ye Maiko's gaze sharpened as she studied him, her playful demeanor not wavering. Luo Qing, surely you're joking. The sacred sakura has stood here for hundreds of years. How could it not have been planted yet? Though she kept her expression light, Ye was now fully focused. The mention of time, coupled with the temporal distortions she had felt since guiding Lumen into the inner realm, made her suspect Luo Qing knew more than he let on. Well then, Ye, Luo Qing said, turning to face her with a mischievous smile. How about we make a bet? A bet? Let's wager on when this sacred sakura was or will be planted. Luo Qing patted the tree trunk. You think it was planted centuries ago, don't you? And you think otherwise? Ye asked, her brow arching slightly. I'll bet that it hasn't been planted yet, Luo Qing said. If I win, you have to keep this little conversation a secret. Deal? A secret, Ye's eyes narrowed slightly, though her mind raced. So this is what it feels like to be on the receiving end of a riddle. Patience, Ye, Luo Qing said with a cryptic smile. You'll see soon enough. Inner realm. Lumen and Paimon found themselves hurtling through a stream of temporal distortions. Seasons changed in an instant, oceans rose and fell, and centuries passed in the blink of an eye. Guided by Ye's instructions, Lumen gathered her thoughts and finally arrived at Ei's side. Before her, Ei wielded Muzu Ishin in a fierce battle against the Raiden Shogun. Within this timeless space, neither held back. Lightning illuminated the void as the clash of blades echoed endlessly. The fight was a raw expression of power, the kind only gods could unleash. There. Lumen watched, awestruck, as the two deities clashed, their every move shaking the space around them. She understood why they fought Ei's betrayal of eternity, her hopes for the future, and Luo Qing's supposed death. These were truths the Raiden Shogun's will could not accept. For samurai, the blade was the only means to resolve conflict. Stop fighting! Please, stop! Paimon shouted desperately, her voice echoing through the space. Hearing the plea, Ei glanced down and saw Lumen and Paimon below. Her eyes widened in surprise, and she quickly parried the Shogun's attack before landing beside them. What are you doing here? Did something happen in Inajima? Before Lumen could respond, the Raiden Shogun descended, her blade crackling with electricity as it bore down on them. Reacting instantly, Ei moved to shield them, her Muzu Ishin deflecting the Shogun's strike. The clash reignited, forcing Lumen and Paimon to retreat. Why won't they stop? Paimon said in frustration. Finally, she shouted, Luo Qing is still alive. Stop fighting already! At her words, both Ei and the Raiden Shogun froze mid-motion, their eyes wide with shock as they turned to Paimon. What did you say? They demanded in unison. Chapter 171, This Trainee Fatui Harbinger is too unreliable. 171. Just a moment ago, the two were locked in a life-and-death battle. And then Paimon dropped a single sentence that extinguished the flames of their fight entirely. The Raiden Shogun, ignoring Ei entirely, flashed like a bolt of lightning toward Paimon. Her voice was cold and unyielding. Repeat what you just said. Terrified by the overwhelming pressure emanating from the Raiden Shogun, Paimon quickly darted behind Lumen, peeking out timidly. I said, Luo Qing isn't dead. He's alive and well. You two can stop fighting now. The Raiden Shogun fell silent, raising her blade and pointing it at Lumen and Paimon. Her voice was like a chilling gust. If you dare lie to me, you will face divine retribution. I am not lying. Paimon stammered, clutching Lumen's shoulder for safety. Luo Qing was so terrified by you that he faked his death to escape. The Raiden Shogun was silent again, her blade hovering indecisively. Luo Qing is really still alive. Ei, too, approached, her brows furrowed as she studied Lumen and Paimon. Of course. We just saw him not long ago, Paimon said, raising her voice slightly. He mentioned he might return to Snezhnia. If you two keep fighting, he could be gone before you even find him. Ei exchanged glances with Lumen and Paimon. Their sincerity made her suspect nothing. Perhaps Luo Qing had indeed escaped using some unknown method. If that were true, then... In that case... Before Ei could make her decision, the Raiden Shogun lifted her blade once more. Her tone was calm, yet resolute. Let this final battle mark the end of the 500 years of fate binding us. Even without Luo Qing's presence, the betrayal against eternity was still an unavoidable catalyst between them. No matter what, the battle between Ei and the Raiden Shogun was destined to happen. Hey? Why are they still fighting? Paimon blinked in confusion. Weren't they fighting because of Luo Qing's supposed death? Now that they knew he was alive, shouldn't this be the part where they stopped fighting and ran to find him, like in those light novel plots? Paimon, stay back. Lumen summoned her blade, shielding Paimon as the battle reignited. The Raiden Shogun ascended into the air, her form wreathed in thunder. The divine aura surrounding her was even more intense than before. You. Feeling the Shogun's intent, Ei frowned. She could sense it clearly. The Shogun was determined to finish this battle quickly, so she could pursue Luo Qing. The murderous intent she'd once harbored toward Luo Qing had long since dissipated, replaced by a lingering fondness she couldn't fully understand. Even if her memories of those tender days were erased, an inexplicable affection remained in her heart. Ei couldn't comprehend why the Raiden Shogun would blush and grow excited at the mere mention of Luo Qing's name. Though, she had to admit, she felt a little. Since that's the case. Drawing the musician once more, Ei spoke calmly. Let this blades will end everything between us. In the next moment, Ei charged at the Raiden Shogun, her determination unwavering. Their clash filled the realm of consciousness with the brilliance of blades and lightning. This was a battleground for gods, one in which Lumen, far from her former strength, had no place. All she could do was wait beside Paimon for the battle to conclude. At last, the lightning subsided. Bearing the hopes of countless Inajamans, Ei emerged victorious. This is the end. You have won. The Raiden Shogun knelt on one knee, her face weary, though her tone carried a hint of urgency. The wool that knows nowhere. In the end, it cannot embrace the future. The reasons behind our blades define the limits of our skills. What I carry are the gazes of countless souls, fixed on the dawn. You need not fear the future, nor face it alone. Ei gazed at the musician in her hand, her voice soft. This blade only responds when I truly understand and accept it. I never saw you as a mere tool, just as you never treated me as a fearless, unfeeling weapon. Hat. So, are you apologizing for that? Ei understood what the Shogun referred to: the erasure of their memories with Luo Qing, his death for the sake of eternity. I'm sorry. The sudden apology surprised the Raiden Shogun. It was a long while before she responded quietly. You truly have changed. Is this what humans call growth? After a moment's hesitation, the Raiden Shogun continued in a calm voice. I understand. I will become your shadow, as you once were mine. But as for him, I won't give him up to you. It took a moment for Ei to process the Shogun's parting words. You still can't let it go, can you? Humph. Neither can you. With that, the Raiden Shogun ascended, transforming into a streak of light that returned to the plane of Euthymia. Wait, that's it. Paimon poked her head out, muttering. So, do we head back now, or? Before she could finish, the musician in Ei's hand began to glow a soft pinkish purple. From within the light, a cheerful voice echoed. Hello, Ei, and to all the witnesses here. This voice. You are, truly. Yes, it's been a long time, Ei. Meanwhile, beneath the sacred sakura tree, Luo Qing twirled his fingers, summoning a small, emerald green seed into his hand. This is. Sensing the seed's vibrant life force, Ye Miko raised an eyebrow in surprise. No need to be so shocked, Miss Ye, Luo Qing said with a smirk. It's merely a little prop for the wager between us. With that, he placed the seed in front of the sacred sakura tree. The air shifted as he did. Ye Miko's expression tightened. She could sense the turbulence of time and space calming instantly with his actions. At the same time, a voice echoed in Luo Qing's mind. Ding! Residual souls of deceased life forms detected nearby. Would you like to use the seed of nirvana? Just as I thought. Luo Qing's lips curled into a knowing smile. It was as he'd suspected. The final fragment of her consciousness had become a seed within the sacred sakura tree, crossing the currents of time and space to return to the past, saving Inajima from calamity. But only by planting the seed in the past, once Ei's heart truly changed, could her spirit fully manifest within the sacred sakura. Use it. With a thought, Luo Qing activated the seed. A soft violet glow emerged from the sacred sakura tree, gathering around the seed of nirvana in his hand. Ding! Residual souls collected. Would you like to proceed with physical reconstruction? Alright then, Luo Qing said suddenly. What? Ye Maiko asked, startled. Miss Ye, remember to keep this a secret for me. Before she could respond, Luo Qing disappeared from beneath the sacred sakura tree. Chapter 172, This Trainee Fatui Harbinger is too unreliable. 172. Ye Maiko stood in place, her hand supporting her chin as she watched Luo Qing's figure vanish into the distance. The moment he raised his hand earlier, the turbulent flow of time she had sensed seemed to abruptly cease. Moreover, the faint glow that had gathered around the sacred sakura tree emitted an aura that felt both familiar and foreign, similar to Ei's yet distinctly different. Could it be? Linking together Luo Qing's recent actions, an extraordinarily bold theory emerged in her mind. Does he really have such power? Ye Maiko glanced at the sacred sakura tree. For reasons she couldn't explain, the tree seemed smaller than before, its cherry blossoms less radiant than usual. Just as she debated whether to track down Luo Qing and confront him directly, hurried footsteps interrupted her thoughts. She turned to see Lumen and Paimon waving as they approached, and alongside them was her old friend Ei. You're back already? Seems everything went smoothly, Ye Maiko remarked with a soft smile, her eyes scanning Ei from head to toe. My, so you've stepped out of your shell. How does embracing the future feel? It's fine, Ei murmured. Lady Maiko, you won't believe this. Paimon exclaimed, her tone exaggerated. We just met Makoto. Makoto? Ye Maiko raised an eyebrow. Her voice was calm but carried a hint of curiosity. Little Paimon, care to explain in detail? It happened right after Ei defeated the shogun. Makoto's voice came from within the Muzu Ishin sword. Paimon animatedly recounted everything that had transpired in the realm of consciousness. As the story unfolded, Ye Maiko's expression grew more thoughtful. By the time Paimon finished, she had pieced the sequence of events together. No wonder. So it was you three who calmed the turbulence I sensed earlier. Ye Maiko resumed her contemplative pose, her expression serious. By now, she realized the truth. Luo Qing had known in advance not only what would transpire within the realm of consciousness but also that Makoto would manifest when Ei's heart truly changed, delivering the sacred sakura tree's seed. That's why he had said the tree had yet to be planted at that time. This man. A trace of irritation crossed Ye Maiko's face. It had been a long time since anyone had made her feel like a mere puppet on their strings. Lady Maiko? Is something wrong? Lumen's concern pulled Ye Maiko from her thoughts. Nothing at all, she replied, her demeanor shifting as a sly smile spread across her face. Her gaze turned toward Ei. But since you know Luo Qing is still alive, how about meeting him one more time? Ye Maiko had long been aware of the connection between Luo Qing and Ei. Although she didn't fully understand why Ei had once sought Luo Qing's life, that didn't stop her from using her friend as an excuse to probe into Luo Qing's secrets. At the very least, before Luo Qing returned to Snezhnia, she intended to unearth every last bit of his mystery. Him. Ei lowered her head, her emotions conflicted. The name Luo Qing stirred something inexplicable within her, a vague sense that they had shared some history, though she couldn't recall what. I hear he's heading back to Snezhnia, Ye Maiko teased. If you don't seize this chance, you might have to chase him all the way there. Ei remained silent, her gaze unfocused as though deep in conversation with the Raiden shogun. I do owe him a proper apology, she finally murmured. Elsewhere. After slipping away from the Grand Narukami Shrine, Luo Qing quickly returned to his safe house in Inajima City. The place, once lively with Rosalind and Teresa's presence, now felt noticeably quiet as Luo Qing prepared for his imminent departure to Snezhnia. He glanced around at his belongings, recalling that many of his personal items had been taken by Kamisato Ayaka, likely for a cenotaph, though he wasn't entirely sure. After tidying the room, Luo Qing retrieved a set of light purple women's kimono. With a thought, he summoned the emerald green seed of nirvana from his system inventory. Proceed with physical reconstruction. Staring at the system prompt, Luo Qing steadied his excitement and selected yes. The seed of nirvana immediately emitted a dazzling green light, floating in midair. It began to grow rapidly, the glow intensifying before condensing into the form of a young girl. As the light faded, pale, snow-like skin gradually came into view. When the radiance finally dissipated, a girl with long, deep purple hair floated in the air. Slowly, she opened her eyes, her expression dazed as she took in her surroundings. Impossible. A hint of astonishment flickered through her violet pupils. Before she could say more, the seed of Nirvana's effects completed, and she plummeted, landing face first onto Luo Qing's tatami mat. Ouch! The girl rubbed her knees, noticing Luo Qing nearby. She straightened up and looked directly at him. Luo Qing examined her from head to toe. Her features were nearly identical to Ei's and the Raiden Shogun's stunningly beautiful, with a figure just as ample. Yet, unlike Ei's mature demeanor, this girl carried an air of youthful innocence. It's you. Her voice was soft, tinged with disbelief. Yes, it's me. But more importantly, Luo Qing swallowed, pointing first at her chest and then at the purple kimono he had set aside. Shouldn't you, put on some clothes first? Just like with Rosalind before, the system's resurrection tool had brought back her body but not her clothing. The girl sitting in front of him, Raiden Makoto, was utterly bare, her long purple hair barely concealing her fair skin. Luo Qing couldn't help but steal a few more glances. Those legs. That figure. Smooth. Makoto looked down at herself and immediately turned crimson. Hugging the kimono to her chest, she glared at Luo Qing with a mix of shame and anger. You. Me what? Luo Qing asked, feigning innocence. Get out. I need to change. Makoto's voice was high-pitched, tinged with both embarrassment and frustration. There's no one else here. Why not just change? Besides, I've already seen everything. +1 frustration value from Makoto. Makoto bit her lip, glaring at him with defiant eyes. Unbeknownst to her, this very expression and posture were driving Luo Qing to the brink. Seeing no sign of him leaving, Makoto let out a small huff, turned away, and began dressing herself. As she picked up the kimono, she noticed something odd. Is this the only piece? Yup. What's the problem? Makoto sighed. What kind of girl wears just the outer layer of a kimono? At the very least, she should have some undergarments. This felt far too unsafe. After securing the obi tightly, she finally turned back to face him. All done? Yes. Good. Now, it's time for answers. Luo Qing's voice turned serious as he stared at her. Earlier, you said of course. You know me, don't you? Yes. Makoto's lips curled slightly as she met his gaze. I know you, Luo Qing. Chapter 173, This Trainee Fatui Harbinger is too unreliable. 173:30 PS. Mystic Code Deployment, Bonus Chapters Sparkles. Yes, I know you, Luo Qing. The unexpected words from Makoto left Luo Qing momentarily stunned. He had imagined countless scenarios for their reunion but hadn't anticipated this one. This. Luo Qing furrowed his brow, his gaze filled with disbelief as he stared at Makoto. Subtly, he activated his system and retrieved his final master ball, hiding it behind his back just in case. After all, he had resurrected Makoto to work for him, not to end up working for her. I can see what you're doing, Makoto said softly, glancing toward his concealed hand. You don't need to be so tense. I bear you no hostility. What else do you know? Luo Qing asked cautiously. Why don't you guess? The realm of consciousness. You glimpsed the future from there, Luo Qing muttered. Only then did it dawn on him. The realm of consciousness existed outside the constraints of Teyvat's time and space. Lumen and Paimon had seen glimpses of both the past and future during their journey there. If Makoto had created that space, it stood to reason she might have also seen Inazuma's future, a future that included Luo Qing. Something like that, Makoto replied. But the future is never set in stone. Your presence is just one thread among countless possibilities, it doesn't guarantee it will come to pass. She lifted her gaze to Luo Qing, her eyes still carrying a trace of amazement. And yet, you happened to witness a future that involved me. That's correct. Silence hung between them as Luo Qing digested her words. For some reason, he had the nagging feeling he had made a colossal mistake. Then you also know why I brought you back to life? He finally asked. Of course, Makoto nodded. You want me to work for you, to become your subordinate. And there's also. Her words trailed off, a faint blush creeping onto her cheeks. What else? Luo Qing prompted. Nothing, that's it, Makoto replied quickly, avoiding his gaze. Well, if that's the case. Luo Qing paused, testing the waters. Does this mean you've agreed? Makoto hesitated, Her expression conflicted. Suddenly, she leaned forward, grabbing Luo Qing's collar. "Why did you go after them?" she demanded. "Hey!" Luo Qing was caught off guard. His gaze flickered between her eyes and the plunging neckline of her loose kimono, where a deep valley had formed from the fabric's shift. Judging by the indignation in her eyes, Makoto knew something significant. After a moment, she released his collar and sat back, lowering her head. You're such a scumbag," she muttered softly. "Hey?" Luo Qing blinked, dumbfounded. She had just been resurrected, and already she was calling him a scumbag? "Come on." Luo Qing sighed, his tone flat. "I haven't even done anything to you yet." "Not yet," Makoto countered sharply. "Does that mean I can later? Can you stop speaking in riddles?" Luo Qing groaned. "Being cryptic is a terrible habit." Makoto studied him for a moment, then sighed. "Fine." She began recounting what she had seen, a single thread of possibility among many, one that featured Luo Qing. It started when a man named Luo Qing appeared in Inajima. After resurrecting her, he brought her along as he stirred up chaos everywhere he went. But the most damning detail was that he left a trail of relationships in his wake, enough that the number of women he had deeply connected with couldn't even be counted on one hand. Even her own sister had. Hiss. Luo Qing sucked in a sharp breath. If what Makoto said was true, then he was undeniably a scumbag of the highest order. After a pause, he asked, "So, after seeing all that, you're still willing to come with me?" Internally, he felt a flicker of excitement. If Makoto had seen all of this, did it mean she would eventually? "Fate cannot be avoided," Makoto replied. "Once a future begins to take shape, no one can escape it." She turned to look out the window, her expression growing somber as memories of that timeline's end resurfaced the unparalleled disaster that lay at its conclusion. "But before we get to that," Makoto said abruptly, pointing at her chest, "don't you think you should find me something to wear underneath this?" To be fair, going without undergarments was comfortable, but it also felt incredibly unsafe. "Oh. Right, one moment," Luo Qing said quickly, leaving the room. He rummaged through Rosaline's old wardrobe in the adjacent room, eventually finding a few sets of lingerie hidden in the back. Ignoring the sizes, he returned and handed them to Makoto. "Here. See if these fit." "All right." Makoto examined the undergarments, then frowned as she looked back at Luo Qing. "What are you staring at?" "Go on, get dressed," he said. +1 frustration value from Makoto. Humph. Turning away, Makoto began the tedious task of slipping the lingerie under her kimono. It wasn't like the future had arrived yet, she certainly wasn't going to let Luo Qing see more than he already had. After some effort, she turned back around, fully dressed. "How is it?" Luo Qing asked. "It's a bit tight," she admitted. "Really? That shouldn't be the case," Luo Qing mused. Rosaline's size shouldn't have been much different from Makoto's. Had someone tampered with the fit? "Why would I lie to you?" Makoto shot back. "Because comparisons and rivalry are unhealthy," Luo Qing said solemnly. Makoto was speechless. Did he think she cared about competing over something like this? "Just make do for now," Luo Qing said, studying her face. "Give me your measurements, and I'll get you some properly fitting clothes later." "Okay," Makoto replied, her tone subdued. "So, I can't meet her yet, can I?" "You already know the answer," Luo Qing said. His current strength wasn't enough to contend with Ei or the Raiden Shogun. Since both of them had previously tried to kill him, he didn't plan on reuniting the sisters until he was certain he could handle the consequences. Makoto fell silent. Though she had been resurrected, her divinity and authority as a god were gone. She was now just an ordinary girl without even a vision to her name. For now, her only option was to cooperate with Luo Qing to reach that ultimate end. Even if she didn't want to, she lacked the strength to resist him. Seeing her quiet, Luo Qing turned to leave. But just as he stepped outside, Makoto's voice stopped him. "Come back quickly. Hey! And don't get too cozy with that Kamisato girl." Chapter 174, This Trainee Fatui Harbinger is too unreliable. 174-40 PS. Mystic Code Deployment, Bonus Chapters Sparkles. Luo Qing said nothing further as he left the room, heading toward Hanamizaka. He fully intended to bid farewell to Kamisato Ayaka before his departure, but not yet. Clutching the small slip of paper with Makoto's measurements scribbled on it, Luo Qing made his way to Ogura Textiles, planning to commission a set of tailored outfits. These clothes. He stopped just outside the shop, staring at the garments displayed on the racks. Several sets of clothes caught his attention: JK uniforms, Lolita dresses, business attire, and sporty midriff-bearing outfits. Almost all of them were designed in blue and white color schemes. Are you here to order? Oh. It's you, dear customer. Ogura Mio looked up from her counter, recognizing Luo Qing instantly. Her face lit up with a broad smile as she hurried out to greet him. Are you here to commission more clothes this time? She asked excitedly. Luo Qing had been a blessing for her business. The last time he placed an order, his bulk commission of dozens of outfits had given her shop a much-needed boost. Now that the Sakoko Decree and Vision Hunt Decree had been lifted, her shop was thriving, with orders pouring in from travelers and merchants alike. Yes, Luo Qing said, handing her the slip of paper. I need some women's kimono made using these measurements. Oh, and make sure to use light purple for the color scheme. Ogura Mio glanced at the note, then tilted her head curiously. These measurements, are they accurate? They are. Why? No reason. She replied hastily, returning to her counter to fetch a catalog. Please pick from these designs. Due to the high volume of orders recently, it may take a while to complete. What about expedited service? Luo Qing asked, flipping through the catalog. Expedited service comes with an extra charge, same rate as before, she explained. Then expedite them all, Luo Qing said casually. He marked a few outfits in the catalog, some bold, some more conservative, before handing it back. Pointing to the wall where the uniforms were displayed, he added, what about those? Were they custom orders too? Ah. Ogura Mio glanced at the wall and nodded. Yes, those were custom orders for other customers. They're already completed, but the clients haven't picked them up yet. Are you interested in that style? Very interested. Luo Qing nodded thoughtfully. His mind briefly wandered to Makoto's bare figure when she had been resurrected, followed by a similar memory of Rosalind. The styles didn't quite match. But that didn't mean he couldn't take a few sets back just in case. Can you make similar ones using the same measurements? He asked. Of course. Expedited as well. Understood. Ogura Mio scribbled down the details, her mind racing as she calculated the workload. With over 20 expedited outfits to complete, she'd likely have to work overtime for the next week. Her sewing machine might even overheat. Sigh, anything for Mora. All right, that's everything, Luo Qing said, paying the bill and preparing to leave. Just as he turned to go, the shop's bell jingled, signaling a new customer's arrival. Excuse me, is my order ready? That voice. Luo Qing turned, only to see Kamisato Ayaka gazing at the completed JK uniforms on the wall, her eyes lighting up with delight. Sensing someone's stare, she glanced to the side and froze when she met Luo Qing's gaze. The two stood there, locked in an awkward silence. What are the odds? Luo Qing, what are you doing here? Ayaka's cheeks flushed as she quickly averted her gaze. I'm here to commission some outfits for a friend, Luo Qing replied calmly. It all made sense now. Those clothes so reminiscent of the designs he'd drawn for Ayaka in the past must have been her secret project with Ogura Mio. Ogura Mio emerged from behind the counter, her face brightening further when she saw Ayaka. Lady Kamisato. Your order is ready. Would you like to try them on, or should I wrap them up for you? Ayaka's face turned an even deeper shade of red. She stole a glance at Luo Qing, who was clearly holding back a laugh, making her even more flustered. Ayaka had wanted to surprise Luo Qing before he left Inajima. She had remembered how he'd gifted her the clothing catalog while teaching her breathing techniques, subtly hinting that she should try on some of the designs. After much deliberation, she had decided to have the outfits made. Her plan had been to wear them as a parting gift when he left. But now, Luo Qing had seen them first. So much for a surprise. Maybe we should try them on at home. Luo Qing teased, leaning in slightly. That's no. Just wrap them up for now. Ayaka stammered, nearly tripping over her words. Of course, Ogura Mio replied, then turned to Luo Qing with a mischievous smile. So you know Lady Kamisato? You should have told me earlier. Since you've ordered so many clothes, I can offer you a 10% discount out of respect for her. Wait, Luo Qing, you ordered a lot of clothes? Ayaka asked curiously. Yes, quite a few, Ogurumio started, only to catch Luo Qing glaring at her. She coughed awkwardly and corrected herself. Ahem, just a few kimono for a friend. Kimono. Ayaka tilted her head, her gaze returning to Luo Qing. A friend who isn't comfortable going out, Luo Qing explained. Oh. Ayaka glanced at the red string on Luo Qing's wrist and lowered her eyes. Another female friend, hey? The room fell silent for a moment before Ayaka spoke again. Luo Qing, would you like to visit the Komor tea house with me? Luo Qing froze. Was this what Makoto meant by don't get too cozy? Just how much does she know? Before he could respond, Ayaka added in a soft voice, the tea house is closed today. No one else will be there. Hey! Luo Qing leaned back slightly, caught off guard by her words. All right, he said eventually. I heard from Toma that Terumaru can do backflips. Might as well go check it out. Chapter 175, This Trainee Fatui Harbinger is too unreliable. Mystic Code Deployment, Bonus Chapters Sparkles. Carrying the bag of clothes for Kamisato Ayaka, Luo Qing accompanied her back to the Komor tea house. Just as Ayaka had mentioned, the tea house was closed for the day, with only Terumaru left inside. Neither Kozu nor Toma was present. With no attendants around, Ayaka took it upon herself to host Luo Qing. She ushered him to the tea room at the end of the corridor before heading to the kitchen to prepare tea and snacks. Raised with the impeccable etiquette of the Kamisato clan, Ayaka was well versed in both cooking and tea ceremony. Meanwhile, Luo Qing sat in the tea room, listening to the sounds of movement from the kitchen. His gaze drifted to the bag of clothes they had brought back from Ogura Textiles. The large bag was packed to the brim with neatly folded outfits, each stacked with care. He recalled the designs he had included in the clothing catalog he'd given Ayaka before. Most of the outfits were ordinary enough to be worn in public, but some were different minimalist designs with daring cuts that could only be appreciated in private settings behind closed doors. Luo Qing glanced at the bag, wondering if Ayaka had gone ahead and ordered those outfits as well. A moment later, he heard footsteps approaching. The door slid open, and Ayaka entered, carrying a tray of tea and snacks she had made herself. Sorry to keep you waiting, Luo Qing, she said softly. No worries at all. I wasn't in a hurry. Luo Qing stood up to take the tray from her and set it on the table. In truth, he was in a hurry, anxious, even, but he hid it well. The two of them sat down together, a brief silence settling over the room. After a moment, Ayaka glanced at the red string around Luo Qing's wrist and spoke hesitantly. Luo Qing, are you leaving Inajima soon? Yes, he replied. Now that my work here is done, I need to return to report to Her Majesty, the Tsaritsa. I see. Ayaka lowered her gaze. Will you come back someday? Of course. Luo Qing smiled, his tone light. After all, you're still here, aren't you, Ayaka? Ah. Caught off guard by his words, Ayaka's face flushed. After a moment of silence, she raised her head and asked in a small voice, Luo Qing, do you have someone you like? Luo Qing leaned back slightly. Oh no. This was the question, the kind that could lead straight to disaster if answered wrong. Of course, he replied, maintaining a calm expression. I like my subordinates, my superior, and all the friends I've made. I treasure them all. No, that's not what I meant, Ayaka said softly. Then what kind of liking do you mean? Luo Qing teased. Care to explain it to me in detail, Ayaka? I mean. Ayaka's blush deepened, and she struggled to find the words. How could she say it? Was she supposed to admit that she meant romantic feelings? There was no way she could say that aloud. Ayaka. Luo Qing prompted gently when she remained silent. What's wrong? Of course, he already knew what she wanted to say. But unfortunately for her, Luo Qing was a scoundrel. And a scoundrel's playbook didn't include making the first move. It's nothing. Ayaka murmured, pointing to the red string on Luo Qing's wrist. I heard from Lumen that two girls gave you that bracelet. That's right, Luo Qing said, nodding. There was no point in denying the truth. And Paimon said that, in Liyue, a girl would only make a red string for someone she likes. Ayaka's voice grew even quieter. Ah, this. Luo Qing finally understood. So today is the day of confessions, hey? Don't listen to Paimon, he said with a laugh. She's not exactly the most reliable source of information. Hey! Ayaka blinked, taken aback. Then why did they make it for you? Maybe because I saved them before. Luo Qing suggested. I see, Ayaka said, breathing a small sigh of relief. After a pause, she tilted her head and asked again, Luo Qing, do you like them? Luo Qing was silent for a moment. Seriously? We're still on this? Yes, I like them, he admitted. Because, honestly, who wouldn't like Gomu and Chen He? Oh. Ayaka's expression fell slightly. But... I also like you, Ayaka, Luo Qing said with a grin, reaching out to gently ruffle her hair. If he wanted everything, then he had to take responsibility for it. Ayaka had already laid her feelings bare to this extent. If he avoided the subject now, it would be too cowardly. Unfortunately, without a favorability card, he couldn't check Ayaka's feelings toward him. Otherwise, he would have been curious to see where he stood. Ayaka let out a soft hum, allowing Luo Qing to pat her head. As the second daughter of the Kamisato clan, she had grown up seeing high-ranking officials with multiple spouses. The idea wasn't unfamiliar to her. But if it were to happen to her? After a while, Ayaka lifted her head and looked at the bag of clothes. Luo Qing, you've always wanted to see me wear the outfits from that catalog, haven't you? Well, kind of, I guess, Luo Qing said awkwardly. So, would you like to see? Ayaka asked, leaning forward slightly, her head tilted inquisitively. I would. Then, Ayaka said with a determined expression, let it be my farewell gift to you. Please, wait here for a moment. She picked up the bag of clothes and walked toward the door. Halfway through, she turned back, her voice barely above a whisper. Luo Qing, you're not allowed to peek. The tea house was empty save for Terumaru, who was napping behind the counter. Ayaka decided to change in the adjacent room for convenience. Of course not. Do I look like that kind of person? Luo Qing replied, feigning indignation. Ayaka couldn't find a reason to argue, so she hugged the bag to her chest and disappeared into the room across the hallway. At first, Luo Qing planned to wait patiently. But hearing the faint sounds of Ayaka changing, he couldn't resist cracking the door open to peek across the hall. And what he saw left him stunned. The sliding doors in Inajima were often made with hollow frames covered by paper or fabric for lightness. With the room's light on and Ayaka standing close to the door, her shadow was perfectly silhouetted against the paper panel. Her graceful figure and delicate curves were clearly visible even down to the smallest details. This is a crime. Luo Qing thought, quickly averting his eyes. A moment later, the door slid open. Ayaka stepped out, wearing a white blouse tied with a bow and a sky blue pleated skirt that reached just above her knees. Luo Qing, what's wrong? Lately, the air feels dry, and I'm feeling a bit heated, Luo Qing replied, clearing his throat. Ayaka let out a soft hum, her fingers tugging nervously at her skirt as she turned her head to the side. Luo Qing, do you think I look good? She asked shyly. Luo Qing swallowed hard. You look amazing. Chapter 176, This Trainee Fatui Harbinger is too unreliable. Mystic Code Deployment, Bonus Chapters Sparkles. Late into the night, Kamisato Ayaka flitted between two rooms, trying on one outfit after another, like a private model putting on a show just for Luo Qing. She went through several sets of clothes she had brought back, each one carefully selected. Among them, Luo Qing particularly loved the sky blue school uniform. On Ayaka, it exuded the vibrant energy of youthful innocence, igniting his enthusiasm and making his heart race. In the end, he couldn't bring himself to let Ayaka change back into her regular clothes. Seated cross-legged on opposite sides of a long table, the two shared stories and anecdotes about recent events in Inajima. The room was dimly lit by a single candle on the table, casting flickering shadows that gave the space a faintly romantic atmosphere. The clock had already ticked deep into the night. Luo Qing glanced out the window, debating whether to leave or stay. Luo Qing, are you leaving already? Ayaka's soft voice broke his train of thought. She had noticed his gaze and spoke in a tone laced with reluctance. Maybe we should call it a night. Luo Qing looked her up and down, a playful smile tugging at his lips. Ayaka, do you want me to leave? Ayaka blinked, startled. It took her a moment to process his teasing, and her cheeks turned pink as she fumbled for a response. She bit her lip before quietly suggesting, there are extra rooms in the tea house. If you don't mind, you could stay. No, what I meant was. Luo Qing interrupted her, leaning forward. Their eyes met. Ayaka's expression turned puzzled, her head tilting slightly. Luo Qing leaned closer, the tips of their noses only centimeters apart. He could smell the delicate fragrance lingering on her. Can I stay in your room tonight, Ayaka? Ayaka flinched, instinctively leaning back. So, that's a no, hey. Luo Qing chuckled and stood up. All right then, Ayaka, I'll head back now. No, that's not what I meant. Ayaka blurted, panic evident in her voice. Then what do you mean? Luo Qing bent down again, looking at her intently. Under the warm glow of the candlelight, Ayaka's face was as red as a freshly ripened apple, making it impossible not to want to take a bite. Ugh! Ayaka lowered her head, too flustered to speak. She realized she had fallen right into his trap. In a small voice, she mumbled, Luo Qing, you're teasing me again. Am I? Luo Qing's grin widened as he took a seat beside her. He reached out and gently tousled her hair. Feeling his hand on her head, Ayaka didn't pull away. Instead, she kept her gaze lowered, sneaking glances at him from time to time. This hesitant yet longing look didn't escape Luo Qing's notice. It stirred something inside him, a mischievous itch. Should I kiss her? Swallowing hard, he made up his mind. His hand slid down, cupping her smooth, tender cheek. Their eyes met again, and Ayaka seemed to understand his intentions. A flicker of resolve appeared in her gaze as she slowly closed her eyes. This. Luo Qing was momentarily stunned by her boldness. After a quick glance around to confirm that no nosy relatives were about to barge in, he gently cradled her adorable face and leaned in. Ah! The softness! The delicate fragrance and moist warmth of her lips. Absolutely divine. On the other hand, Ayaka, who had only ever read about kisses in light novels, had no practical experience. She closed her eyes, parted her lips slightly, and clumsily followed Luo Qing's lead. She didn't understand why he was exploring her mouth with his tongue or the purpose of exchanging saliva, but since it was something Luo Qing wanted, she didn't refuse. The kiss lingered until they finally pulled apart, both slightly out of breath. Ha! Ayaka's face was flushed, her breaths coming in soft pants. The long kiss left her jaw a little sore and her breathing uneven. But her heart swelled with a powerful urge to tell Luo Qing how she truly felt. Luo Qing! As she began to speak, he slid an arm around her shoulder, pulling her into his embrace. What's the matter? Luo Qing feigned confusion. Most guys her age would have taken things further by now, but Luo Qing wasn't like most guys. He was, in his own words, a scoundrel. And scoundrels never rush, they wait until the girl takes the lead. Like now. Luo Qing, I like you. Ayaka's voice was soft, barely a whisper, but filled with certainty as she buried her face in his chest. Luo Qing gently stroked her hair, his voice equally tender. Luo Qing, do you like me too? Ayaka lifted her head, looking up at him with shy anticipation. Of course, Ayaka. You're so adorable, how could I not like you? Her gaze dropped again, her cheeks glowing pink. As if something had just occurred to her, Ayaka began to lift her head, only for Luo Qing to cut her off. He cupped her face with one hand and kissed her again. This time, their embrace was tighter, their bodies pressed even closer. Lost in the moment, they ended up lying together on the tatami floor. Minutes passed as they kissed, their breaths mingling. Then Ayaka suddenly felt a hand slide under her blouse, startling her into sitting upright. She scrambled back, pressing her hands over her chest, her face a picture of panic. Luo Qing, that kind of thing should wait until we're married. Inajima, like Liyue, upheld traditional values, and as the daughter of the Kamisato clan, which oversaw the nation's cultural rituals, Ayaka had been raised with a conservative mindset. In her view, certain actions were only permissible after marriage. Her current outfit, a thin school uniform designed by Luo Qing, offered little protection. Beneath the jacket, there was only a light camisole, and under the pleated skirt, just a small pair of shorts. If she had let Luo Qing continue, it wouldn't have taken long for him to strip her completely. Ahem, sorry. I got carried away for a moment. Carried away? Ayaka pouted, her eyes betraying a hint of annoyance. They had agreed to only kiss, but this guy had taken liberties. Her thoughts wandered back to the skilled way Luo Qing had kissed her, prompting her to mumble, Luo Qing, you seem awfully experienced at this. Luo Qing froze, feeling the weight of yet another loaded question. Well, Before he could explain, Ayaka interrupted him. You've kissed other girls before, haven't you? Luo Qing's silence spoke volumes. Caught. Ayaka, let me exp. It's late. I'm going to bed. Ayaka stood, covering her chest, and moved to the door. Her expression seemed to say, you may leave now. All right. Luo Qing sighed inwardly. Why couldn't he control himself? He blamed his time spent with the Raiden Shogun and it had made him careless. Good night, Ayaka. I'll be off then. But just as he reached the door, he felt small hands wrap around his waist. The next moment, something soft pressed against his back. Ayaka. She buried her face in his back, her voice muffled as she whispered, Luo Qing, can you, only like me? Luo Qing hesitated, unsure how to respond. I see. Ayaka's arms loosened as she stepped back, her face calm and sweetly smiling. Let's end it here for tonight. Good night, Luo Qing. Chapter 177, This Trainee Fatui Harbinger is too unreliable. Mystic Code Deployment, Bonus Chapters Sparkles. Several days had passed. After Kamisato Ayaka's heartfelt confession that night, Luo Qing had assumed she would avoid him from then on. To his surprise, when they met the next day, Ayaka greeted him with her usual smile, inviting him to the Komore tea house as though nothing had changed. However, with the tea house reopening for business, the intimacy of that night was not repeated. At most, Luo Qing managed to steal a quick kiss or two during fleeting moments. Soon, the custom clothes Luo Qing had ordered were ready, and it was time for him to head to Rita to reunite with Natalia and the others for their return to Snezhnia. Ayaka had long known about Luo Qing's departure, and when the day finally came, she showed no overt emotion. She simply smiled and made plans to meet again in the future. Snezhnia was in the far north, while Inajima lay to the south opposite ends of Teyvat. A round trip would take nearly half a year. In Ayaka's mind, it would be a long time before she saw Luo Qing again. She also had no idea what purpose the odd black, toilet-shaped object Luo Qing had left in her room might serve. At Ritu. To save time, Luo Qing didn't travel at a leisurely pace. Instead, he scooped up Makoto and activated Time Zero, sprinting full speed toward the port. A journey that would normally take days was completed in a single day. Before parting ways with Natalia and the others, Luo Qing had already instructed them to prepare a ship. When he arrived, they could set sail for Snezhnia immediately. After meeting up with them at Ritu, Luo Qing planned to stay only one day before departure. That day, Natalia and the others were packing up on the deck, chatting idly with Rosalind as they waited for the captain to weigh anchor. This was a merchant ship bound for Snezhnia, carrying not only them but several Snezhnian merchants as well. Unbelievable, Natalia sighed as she glanced toward the bow. Luo Qing was deep in conversation with a hooded and masked young woman. Our lord disappears for a few days, and when he returns, he's got another girl trailing after him. Luo Qing-sama is truly a lover of all things beautiful, Natalia teased. Wherever he goes, he attracts pretty women like bees to honey. Keep your voice down, Igor cautioned, shooting her a wary look. You know how much he hates being talked about behind his back. Humph, calling him a lover isn't an insult, it's a compliment. Natalia retorted. She glanced back at Luo Qing and the masked woman chatting animatedly, clearly too preoccupied to notice them. Has he always been like this? Rosalind asked hesitantly. If Luo Qing really was a womanizer, it would complicate things for her. Not exactly, Natalia shrugged. Luo Qing-sama has his standards. She gestured toward Teresa, who was leaning against the railing, staring daggers at the hooded woman. See? Some people can't even make it to his radar, no matter how hard they try. Rosalind followed Natalia's gaze, noting Teresa's sullen expression and clenched fists. Rosalind fell silent, realizing she might have underestimated the dynamics within Luo Qing's group. Why hasn't the captain set sail yet? What's the hold-up? Igor grumbled impatiently. He was eager to return to Snezhnia. After all, Teresa had promised to introduce him to a beautiful firefly mage, someone as lovely as her. I heard that ships heading to Snezhnaya are being inspected by the Kanjo Commission, Natalia replied offhandedly. We're probably waiting for the inspection. As she spoke, a group of Kanjo Commission guards boarded the ship. The leader glanced briefly at Luo Qing before beginning their inspection. After completing the routine check, the guards disembarked. Looks like we're good to go, Natalia said, stretching lazily. Finally, we're heading back to Snezhnaya. I wonder how many military merits this trip will earn us. Something feels off, Igor muttered. He noticed one of the guards at the pier speaking to a Kanjo Commission official. Their eyes darted toward Luo Qing several times before one of them hurriedly ran off in the direction of the Commission's headquarters. Luo Qing seems to have caught someone's attention. Caught someone's attention. Natalia waved dismissively. With his strength, anyone bothering him is just asking to get dragged into a public dance-off. Unless it's the Raiden Shogun herself, who else could? Before she could finish, a clap of thunder echoed overhead. A streak of deep purple lightning shot up from the direction of the Kanjo Commission headquarters and streaked toward the ship. Ah, this! A sinking feeling settled in Natalia's gut. The lightning landed on the deck, dispersing to reveal the Raiden Shogun herself. Her appearance was so distinct and awe-inspiring that everyone present, whether crew member, merchant, or bystander on the pier, turned their attention to the deck. Even Makoto, hidden beneath her hood and mask, froze in shock. You're still alive, Ei murmured, her voice calm and unreadable as she stared at Luo Qing. She had been waiting on Rita for days, determined to see him one last time before he left. Luo Qing stiffened, instinctively taking a half step back. Feigning ignorance, he replied, I think you've mistaken me for someone else, General. Do we know each other? Ei fell silent, her gaze sweeping over the onlookers. She spoke in a low voice. I'm sorry for what happened before. General, I don't understand what you mean. We don't know each other, so why apologize? Luo Qing maintained his act, carefully avoiding any confirmation of familiarity. He knew Ei had overridden the usual control over their connection, and he couldn't predict what she might do. He wouldn't admit anything unless absolutely necessary. Ei glanced briefly at the masked woman standing nearby, her expression unreadable. Something about her seemed oddly familiar, though she couldn't place it. After a moment's hesitation, Ei returned her focus to Luo Qing. No matter who you claim to be, you must accept my apology, and. She faltered slightly, her eyes showing a flash of resolve. She wants to see you. With that, Ei's demeanor shifted, growing colder and more distant. She had relinquished control of her body to the Raiden Shogun as compensation, allowing her other self to meet Luo Qing in person. General. Luo Qing started to speak, only to be cut off. The Raiden Shogun, now in control, looked at him with uncharacteristic warmth. A soft smile graced her lips as she strode forward, cupping his face with both hands. Before Luo Qing could react, she leaned in and kissed him. Gasps erupted from the onlookers. Was this a dream? The legendary Raiden Shogun kissing a man. What was going on? Chapter 178, This Trainee Fatui Harbinger is too unreliable. Luo Qing was just as stunned as everyone else. Noticing the wide-eyed stares from the surrounding crowd, he quickly took a step back, slipping out of the Raiden Shogun's grasp. Ever since he discovered that Ei and the Raiden Shogun could bypass the restrictions of affection points, Luo Qing had resolved not to provoke them again until his strength surpassed theirs. After all, his guardian angel ability was on cooldown, and his substitute puppet was a one-time use. Without any life-saving tools left, behaving as recklessly as before would almost certainly result in him getting skewered again by their blades, a scenario he'd prefer to avoid at all costs. It hurt too much last time. General, don't you think this kind of behavior is a bit inappropriate in front of so many people? Luo Qing tactically retreated, maintaining a polite facade. Since she had lost her memories of their previous encounters, he might as well pretend nothing had ever happened. He could start fresh once he became stronger. The Raiden Shogun instinctively wanted to follow him but stopped herself. She wasn't sure what came over her earlier. The moment she saw Luo Qing, an overwhelming impulse surged through her, a desire to kiss him. Reasoning that her body was currently controlled by Ei, and any fallout from rumors would trouble Ei, not her, she had simply followed that impulse. I'm sorry, for what happened before. The Raiden Shogun lowered her head, her voice soft. There's no need for that, General. It's all in the past, Luo Qing replied with a polite smile before deftly changing the subject. Do you have any other business with me? If not, I must ask you to disembark soon, the ship is about to set sail. The Raiden Shogun stared at Luo Qing, a strange unease stirring in her chest. You're leaving? Yes, I've received orders. I must return to Snezhnaya. As Luo Qing spoke, he glanced at Natalia, who was watching the scene with unabashed curiosity. Catching his signal, she quickly dropped her spectator demeanor and nodded, rushing to the captain's quarters. Moments later, the ship's horn blared, signaling its imminent departure. The whistle's blown. What do you think, General? The Raiden Shogun remained silent, realizing Luo Qing was politely asking her to leave. After a long pause, she finally muttered, couldn't you stay a little longer? I'm afraid not, Luo Qing said with a faint smile. It's a strict order. If I don't return, I'd be considered a traitor. From the side of the deck came the sound of the anchor being raised. Seconds later, the ship began to sway as it slowly moved away from the port. The Raiden Shogun glanced toward the docks, her eyes momentarily glazing over as though conversing with Ei. General, are you planning to join us on our journey to Snezhnaya? Luo Qing asked with feigned casualness. If so, I should probably inform Her Majesty the Tsaritsa in advance. The Raiden Shogun looked at Luo Qing, her voice soft as she said, Luo Qing. If you ever wish to return, Inajima and this body will always welcome you. With that, she extended her right hand, where a petal made of crackling violet lightning formed in her palm. This holds a fragment of my will. If you ever find yourself in mortal danger, crush it. No matter where you are, I will come to your aid immediately. General, isn't this too valuable? Luo Qing feigned reluctance. No. The Raiden Shogun shook her head slowly. This is something I owe you. Without waiting for a response, she took Luo Qing's hand, placing the petal gently in his palm. Farewell, Luo Qing. I will be waiting for you in Inajima. With those words, the Raiden Shogun transformed into a bolt of lightning, vanishing from the deck. The oppressive aura of divinity lifted, leaving the onlookers around the deck feeling as though a great weight had been removed from their chests. What is this thing? Luo Qing muttered, examining the pale pink petal in his hand. He turned to Makoto with a wary look. It doesn't have some kind of tracking function, does it? From behind her mask, Makoto's muffled voice answered coldly, you scumbag. It was clear she wasn't pleased with how Luo Qing had pretended not to know the Raiden Shogun earlier. How am I a scumbag? Luo Qing retorted righteously. I'm just trying to avoid getting stabbed by those two again. How is that wrong? Humph. Makoto scoffed lightly before explaining, the petal only sends a location signal to Ei when it's crushed. It's not as complicated as you think. She turned to leave, muttering, I'm seasick. I'm going to rest. With that, she disappeared into the ship's cabin. Wearing a hood and mask for so long had made it difficult for her to breathe, and the earlier encounter with Ei where she couldn't even reveal herself had left her feeling emotionally drained. All right then. Luo Qing shrugged, unbothered. With a flicker of thought, he stored the petal in his system inventory. He doubted he'd ever need it, but since it was given to him, he saw no reason to refuse. Meanwhile, the bolt of lightning carrying the Raiden Shogun streaked across the sky, eventually landing in Tenchikaku. Alone in the uppermost room, she sat quietly, feeling a strange sense of familiarity within the space. It was as though something significant had happened here with Luo Qing. Closing her eyes, the Raiden Shogun's consciousness returned to the plane of euthymia. I only asked you to say goodbye to him. I didn't tell you to kiss him. Ei's voice carried a trace of reproach as she opened her eyes. The port had been crowded, and many had witnessed the Raiden Shogun kissing Luo Qing. While the Shogun could retreat into the plane of euthymia to escape any fallout, Ei would have to face the Inajiman public. Their Archon kissing someone? That was unprecedented. It wasn't just my impulse, the Raiden Shogun replied calmly. I was helping you act on yours as well. What's wrong with that? Nonsense. I never had such a ridiculous impulse. Ei shot back, flustered. That's your thought, not mine. If that's what you want to believe, so be it. I don't mind, the Raiden Shogun said, her voice indifferent. She sat beside Ei, closed her eyes, and added softly, you should go now. Ei fell silent, her gaze drifting to the rows of bookshelves lining the room. Her eyes landed on a black, toilet-shaped object in the corner. After her obsession with killing Luo Qing had taken hold, she had thrown all the light novels and that peculiar toilet out of the plane of euthymia. Yet, since the Raiden Shogun had taken up residence here, she had brought them all back. "Why do you still keep these things?" Ei asked. "They belong to Luo Qing." "I know, but they don't belong here. They belong to Luo Qing." T/N, Jesus, almost 700 power stones? You guys already unlocked 400 power stones. It wasn't even a thing before, now it's a thing for all my stories SMH. If you notice anything that feels off, just let me know, I don't mind fixing things up. Oh, and don't forget to sit up, grab some water, and take it easy while you're here. No rush, right? If you're into this, consider checking out patreon.com/wisetl right bracket. Your support helps me keep going, and I'm grateful for every bit of it. Big announcement below, please read. It's the same announcement posted on Patreon, so if you read that already you can skip it. 3C. Hear me, mongrels. This week, you have proven yourselves worthy. Through your steadfast dedication, the Mystic Code deployment, bonus chapters has been unlocked, thanks to one story reaching 400 Power Stones 3 times. By your hands, the Power Stone progression has evolved, 30/40/50/100/200, and now, a mighty new goal of 400 Power Stones stands ready to reward your efforts. But do not mistake this as the pinnacle of glory. No, what lies ahead is a treasure more magnificent than any before, the unveiling of a noble phantasm. Tapiceria Eternal now awaits the worthy. What is Tapiceria Eternal? It is a noble phantasm of unparalleled grandeur, woven from the threads of your support. When a story reaches 800 Power Stones, 4 extra chapters will be bestowed upon it on a single day, bringing the total to a staggering 12 chapters in one day. Yet, this tapestry is vast, encompassing all stories. To honor your collective efforts, every other ongoing story shall receive 2 bonus chapters in celebration of this monumental feat. The path to unleash Tapiceria Eternal. A story must amass 800 Power Stones in a single week to activate this noble phantasm. Tapiceria Eternal can only be unleashed once per story each month. To summon it again within the same month, another story must achieve the 800 Power Stone milestone. Do you comprehend the scale of this offering? A noble phantasm such as this is not simply given, it is earned. So rise, readers, and let your Power Stones speak. The gates to the eternal tapestry have been opened. The only question now is, will you seize it? Chapter 179, This Trainee Fatui Harbinger is too unreliable. 179. Several months later, in Snezhnaya. After months at sea, the merchant ship returning from Inajima finally docked at Snezhnaya's harbor. For the first time in over a year, Luo Qing and his companions set foot on Snezhnayan soil again. The familiar port, the biting cold of the air. As they disembarked from the deck, Natalia and the others were in high spirits. Though Snezhnaya's frigid climate was far from the livable conditions of Mondstadt or Liyue, this was home. For the Fatui, returning home intact, without any missing limbs, was a luxury. For these 3, safely returning was cause enough to celebrate. You're all on leave for the next few days. Go home, find your families, Luo Qing called out casually as he watched the trio frolicking ahead. But, my lord, what about the audience with Her Majesty? Don't worry. I'll notify you when the time comes. Yes, Luo Qing-sama. With that, the 3 cheered and disappeared into the bustling port crowds. Going home, hey? Must be nice, Luo Qing mused as he watched them leave, a faint smile tugging at his lips. The trio had barely graduated from the recruit camp when he whisked them away for his mission. Getting them back in one piece felt like a small victory for him, too. His gaze shifted to Teresa, who was still standing by his side. Teresa, he said, puzzled. Didn't I say you're on leave? Why aren't you heading home with the others? Teresa's expression faltered, and after a moment's hesitation, she replied softly, It's fine, my lord. I can go back later. Hey? Why is that? Luo Qing raised an eyebrow. When he first met Teresa, she couldn't stop talking about how much she wanted to return to Snezhnaya. Now that they were finally back, she didn't seem all that eager. Well. Teresa hesitated before tilting her head up with a forced smile. I live alone, so it doesn't really matter when I go back. Luo Qing fell silent, his eyes lingering on her strained smile. He thought to himself, what an idiot I am. All right then. You're coming with me for dinner tonight, he said, ruffling her hair. Having spent so much time with Teresa, it was the first time he'd learned anything about her family's situation. He'd always thought Teresa was a bit dense, which made her antics easy to shrug off. But now, hearing that she lived alone stirred something in him for the first time. Maybe it was because he was an orphan too. Really? Thank you, my lord. Teresa's eyes lit up as she threw her arms around his and began nuzzling him. All right, cut it out, Luo Qing said, feigning annoyance as he pried his arm free. Looking toward the other two women standing nearby, he added, let's go. Time to head home. Luo Qing stretched lazily. Though he called it home, his situation wasn't much different from Teresa's. His house was empty too. He had already informed the Fatui headquarters in advance of his return. Before the inevitable summons from Pierrot, he planned to take some time to rest. Leading the three women, Luo Qing made his way toward his residence. Just as they were leaving the port, a broad-shouldered man with sharp brows and a cigarette in his mouth stood waiting near the exit. When he spotted Luo Qing, he waved and jogged over. You brat! The man punched Luo Qing lightly on the shoulder, grinning. You really made it back alive. Not bad. Why do you sound like you were hoping I wouldn't, Belov? Luo Qing teased. Belov was one of the few people Luo Qing considered a friend in Snezhnia. After all, this man had once lost a bet and actually helped him steal Arlecchino's stockings. Humph, if you'd died, I'd have had to clean up the mess. No thanks, Belov replied, slinging an arm over Luo Qing's shoulder. His gaze shifted to the three women following behind. Apart from Teresa, with her striking violet hair and eyes, the other two were masked and hooded, their figures the only clue that they were women. Not bad, kid. You came back with three more in the family, hey. What's the matter, jealous? Luo Qing quipped. Ha! I have a wife. What's there to be jealous about? Belov snorted. Leaning closer, he whispered conspiratorially, by the way, you still have it, right? Have what? Luo Qing's grin froze. Don't play dumb. You know, that thing. Oh, it's safe. Why? Lend it to me for a few days. Belov muttered. Luo Qing stared at him. Don't get the wrong idea. I just want to let my wife wear it for a while. Belov clarified in a hushed tone. When she steps on me, it'll feel like Arlecchino-sama herself is stepping on me. If your wife wears it, it's not original anymore. No way, Luo Qing said sternly. He would protect the essence of Arlecchino-sama's stockings with his life. You brat! Belov opened his mouth to shout but quickly glanced around, lowering his voice. I risked my life stealing that for you. What's wrong with borrowing it for a few days? Nope. When Arlecchino-sama came back, she even asked about it at the hearth. She said a pair of her stockings was missing. I nearly got caught. Still no. Fine, Luo Qing sighed. Just go steal another pair. She's here in Snezhnia right now. How am I supposed to do that? Come on, I'm desperate. Belov's face contorted in frustration. Call me when it's about drinks, Luo Qing said, patting his friend on the shoulder. Turning to the women behind him, he motioned for them to follow and walked past Belov without a backward glance. Makoto and Rosalind, both masked, exchanged glances before casting disdainful looks at Belov. Even through their masks, Belov could feel the sheer contempt. What's with them? Luo Qing likes stockings too. Why am I the only one getting judged here? At the Zapoliarny Palace. In the dimly lit central hall, a massive square stone coffin stood ominously. A girl lay draped over the coffin, humming a mournful tune that echoed throughout the chamber. The harbingers, clad in white cloaks, stood around the coffin, their expressions varied. Today, we gather to commemorate a dear companion. Her sacrifice merits a half-day of mourning for all of Snezhnia, Pulcinella intoned, bowing his head solemnly. Humph! Just half a day. Pantalone's smile was razor-sharp as he glanced at Pulcinella. They say the Northland Bank runs on Snezhnia's blood and tears, but Mayor, your values are more twisted than those of a banker like me. Rosalind fell on foreign soil, Arlecchino snapped, her voice icy. For someone like you lacking empathy and cowering in Snezhnia to sneer at her sacrifice, keep your mouth shut. Now. This isn't the time for bickering, Child interjected from his seat in the corner, smirking. but I can't help noticing someone's missing. Are you really going to snub our newest colleague like this? Enough, Tartaglia. I know you're itching for a fight, but not now, Capitano said calmly. We're here to honor Rosalind. Despite the dishonor of her methods, her sacrifice was meaningful. Still, where are Dottery, Scaramouche, and the Gnosis from Inajima? Let the world believe divine knowledge is incomprehensible, Dottery said with a chilling grin, swirling a vial in his hand. From the shadows, a middle-aged man stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the ornate stone coffin. The night's foolish play must end. Chapter 180, This Trainee Fatui Harbinger is too unreliable. 180. After reaching adulthood, Luo Qing had moved out of the hearth of the fireplace. In the expensive real estate market of Snezhnia's capital, he had managed to scrape together enough from Arlecchino's rewards and his own savings to purchase a modest two-bedroom apartment. Now back home, with Makoto and Rosalind accompanying him, the apartment felt a bit cramped. Still, it served as a good way to strengthen their bonds. For several days, Luo Qing enjoyed a rare moment of leisure. Rosalind took charge of household chores. While she hadn't done such tasks in ages, her distant memories resurfaced, and she quickly regained her knack for it. The only issue was her culinary repertoire. It leaned heavily on Mondstadt and Samura dishes, which didn't quite suit Luo Qing's palate as someone from Snezhnia and Liyue. Snezhnia's perpetual cold discouraged outdoor activities. So, Luo Qing stayed home with Makoto and Rosalind, passing the time playing fun games. Days passed uneventfully, until Luo Qing finally received a summons from the Fatui headquarters. The decree was from the high and noble Tsaritsa herself. Luo Qing and his subordinates are to report to the Zapoliarny Palace immediately. Subordinates? Luo Qing muttered, his gaze flicking toward Rosalind and Makoto, seated before him, engrossed in a card game. At home, the two women discarded their hoods and masks, donning comfortable casual clothing that highlighted their figures. Strictly speaking, they were his subordinates too. But if he brought them to meet the Tsaritsa? If she discovered their presence, it would be a disaster. Master, your turn, Rosalind said softly, eyes fixed on her hand of cards. At the moment, they were playing landlord, with punishments for the loser. Let's stop here, Luo Qing said, tossing his cards onto the table. Her Majesty has summoned me. I have to go. The Tsaritsa. Makoto tilted her head, squinting suspiciously. You sure this isn't an excuse because your hand was terrible? Do I look like that kind of person? Luo Qing exclaimed indignantly, standing abruptly. Rosalind, ever the considerate one, also stood and helped him straighten his tie, fasten his coat, and drape the white mantle over his shoulders. This white mantle, a symbol of the Fatui Harbingers, was a privilege she once held herself. Now, however, hers served as a symbolic burial shroud at headquarters. After all, to the world, she was presumed dead. The only ones who knew the truth, aside from Luo Qing, were Ei and the Raiden Shogun. Fortunately, it seemed they hadn't shared the details of Rosaline's rescue with anyone. All right, you two behave while I'm gone, Luo Qing instructed. If anyone breaks in, make them forget their name before kicking them out. Got it? Yes, Master, Rosalind replied softly. Got it. Makoto chimed in. Good. I'm off. Luo Qing left the apartment, his white mantle trailing behind him. Before leaving, he'd used his system rewards to give Makoto a spare electrovision and a vision binder. Given that Makoto's physical body was no stronger than an ordinary girl's and she couldn't wield elemental powers anymore, the gift seemed appropriate. After all, she was once the Archon of electro-mastering. Lightning came naturally to her. Outside, Luo Qing gathered his 4 subordinates and made his way to the Zapoliarny Palace. The Tsaritsa's palace, the coldest place in Snezhnia. Draped in his white mantle, Luo Qing led the way, with Natalia and the others in their Fatui military uniforms following close behind. Under the guidance of an attendant, they stepped inside the Grand Palace for the first time. At the far end of the throne room, Pierrot stood beside the towering throne currently unoccupied. The other harbingers, arranged by rank, stood on either side of the steps leading to the throne. As Luo Qing and his group entered, the harbingers turned their gaze toward them, their expressions unreadable. The silent hall amplified the sound of their footsteps. Phew! The oppressive aura in the room was almost too much for Natalia and the others. They struggled to keep their knees from buckling, forcing themselves to follow Luo Qing closely. They're all here. Luo Qing murmured, his face calm as he glanced at the throne. He recognized most of them from afar at large Snezhnayan events during his days as a lowly intelligence officer. Only Arlecchino and Child had ever interacted with him directly. Now, he stood at the base of the throne as one of their own. Eventually, Luo Qing and his subordinates reached the throne. Unable to withstand the immense pressure, Natalia and the others dropped to one knee, bowing their heads. Even Luo Qing inclined his head slightly. Subordinate Luo Qing greets Her Majesty the Tsaritsa. At that moment, a soft azure light appeared above the icy throne, gradually forming the figure of a woman who reclined lazily in the seat. Luo Qing Schnitzvish, a child of the hearth, Pierrot said, glancing at Arlecchino as he spoke. Luo Qing raised his head. Schnitzvish, the surname Arlecchino had bestowed upon him during his time at the hearth. Though he wasn't particularly fond of it, it was his official name in Snezhnia. Your achievements in Liyue, Pierrot continued, have been praised before Her Majesty by Rosalind herself. Her Majesty acknowledges your contributions. But if you wish to join the Harbingers and serve under her noble command to seize the authority of the gods, your efforts are far from sufficient. Your guidance, please, Your Majesty, Luo Qing said, his expression neutral, though a trace of disappointment flickered in his eyes. His main goal for this audience had been to catch a glimpse of the Tsaritsa's true form. But seated on the throne was merely her spiritual projection. To become Her Majesty's instrument in seizing divine authority, you must first prove your strength, Pierrot stated calmly. He had chosen Luo Qing as an apprentice harbinger because of his talent for emotional manipulation. Now, it was time for Luo Qing to demonstrate whether that skill could reach the level of a harbinger. Luo Qing feigned hesitation before a sly grin spread across his lips. Then, please forgive my audacity, Your Majesty, he said, his tone cool as he raised his head. His gaze swept across the harbingers before him. With a subtle thought, he activated his imitate cat meowing emotion manipulation tool card. No one in the room was spared, not a single one. Even the Tsaritsa's spiritual projection was susceptible to Luo Qing's system. As a deity, she deserved no less than the ultimate treatment. To that end, Luo Qing bombarded her with over a dozen cards, emptying his inventory. For a brief moment, the room fell into an awkward silence as the harbingers' expressions shifted in bewildering ways. +1 frustration value from Pierrot. +1 frustration value from Daughtery. +1 frustration value from Columbina. +1 frustration value from Tartaglia. +1 frustration value from Sandrone. +1 frustration value from Pantalone. +1 frustration value from Pulcinella. +1 frustration value from Capitano. +1 frustration value from Arlecchino. Oh, hey there, Trave. Move aside, Venti, this bard's had enough of the spotlight. It's my turn now. The poll to decide the next stories is live. Yes, even you, free members, can cast your votes alongside the paid supporters. Aren't I generous? Yellow heart. Head over to patreon.com/wisetl right bracket and make your voice heard. Let's see which treasures get to shine next. And remember, your queen is watching. Don't disappoint me.
Thanks for listening.